What if everything you thought you knew about ancient history was incomplete? Picture massive stones moved across impossible distances without wheels or machinery. Structures aligned with celestial precision using tools we can barely comprehend. And engineering marvels that defy all conventional timelines of human progress. These aren't scenes from science fiction, they're real achievements scattered across our planet, silent testimonies to civilizations that accomplished what should have been impossible with the technology of their time. Today, we're embarking on an extraordinary journey to explore 30 ancient infrastructure projects that simply shouldn't exist based on what modern science understands about their eras. From the desert plains of Peru to the deep forests of Cambodia, from underground cities carved into solid rock to temples that track the movement of stars with breathtaking accuracy, these constructions challenge the very foundations of historical knowledge. They whisper of lost techniques, forgotten wisdom, and capabilities that push us to reconsider the narrative of human development. As we delve into each of these enigmatic wonders, we'll uncover not just how they were built, but why they continue to baffle archaeologists, engineers, and historians to this day. This is more than a list. It's an invitation to expand your perspective, to marvel at the ingenuity of our ancestors, and to question what might be possible when human determination meets unexplained knowledge. So settle in and open your mind, because by the end of this exploration, you may never look at the ancient world the same way again. Long before the invention of the wheel or the discovery of steel, human civilizations were undertaking construction projects of a scale and precision that would be daunting even with today's machinery. This is the central, captivating mystery of ancient engineering, a field where the conventional timeline of human progress seems to unravel. We are left staring at monuments built from stones that weigh as much as 50 elephants, moved across dozens of miles of rugged terrain, and lifted into place with a perfection that modern lasers would struggle to improve upon. These are not just simple structures, they are complex feats of engineering that required a deep understanding of mathematics, astronomy, geology, and physics. The puzzles multiply when we consider the context. How did cultures without written language, like the builders of Göbekli Tepe, organize the labor and planning for such massive endeavors? What tools allowed the Inca to shape granite and andesite with such exactitude that their walls have withstood centuries of earthquakes without a single stone slipping? The theories proposed by scholars are as varied as the structures themselves. Some point to lost technologies, advanced knowledge that was somehow forgotten by later generations. Others suggest we have simply underestimated the sheer power of human ingenuity, cooperation, and the slow, patient accumulation of knowledge passed down through oral traditions and hands-on experimentation. Then there are the more speculative ideas, like the possibility of extraterrestrial influence or assistance, which, while captivating to the imagination, often lack concrete evidence and are dismissed by mainstream academia. The true explanation likely lies in a combination of factors: a sophisticated understanding of simple machines like levers and ramps, a profound connection to and observation of the natural world, and social structures capable of mobilizing thousands of people toward a single, awe-inspiring goal. As we embark on this countdown, each entry is more than just a location. It is a question mark carved in stone, a direct challenge to our modern assumptions about the past, and a humbling reminder of what humanity can achieve. Our journey into the impossible begins with perhaps the most iconic ancient structure on Earth, the Great Pyramid of Giza. This monumental tomb, constructed for the pharaoh Khufu over a period of roughly 20 years, is a masterclass in precision engineering that defies easy explanation. Just consider the raw numbers for a moment. The pyramid is composed of approximately 2.3 million individual blocks of limestone and granite. Many of these stones weigh between 2.5 to 15 tons, which is equivalent to a small herd of elephants, but the real marvels are the massive granite beams used in the king's chamber. These monoliths, quarried from Aswan over 500 miles away, weigh a staggering 40 to 80 tons each. The concept of transporting just one of these giants across such a vast distance, let alone lifting it precisely into place near the pyramid's apex, is a logistical nightmare even with modern machinery. Yet, the Egyptians somehow accomplished this with nothing more than copper chisels, stone hammers, and rope. The most widely accepted theory, championed by Egyptologists like Mark Lehner, involves a massive system of ramps. Workers would have hauled these colossal stones on sledges, potentially lubricating the path with water to reduce friction, up earthen inclines that coiled around the rising structure. While this seems plausible for the smaller blocks, the method becomes almost fantastical when applied to the 80-ton granite behemoths. The incline would have needed to be incredibly long and stable, requiring an unimaginable amount of material and labor just for the ramp itself, a project nearly as large as the pyramid. Beyond the sheer brute force required, the pyramid's design reveals a sophistication that borders on the supernatural. Its base is almost a perfect square, with sides that vary by less than 5.5 inches, an astonishingly tiny margin of error for a structure measuring over 750 feet per side. Even more incredibly, the pyramid is aligned to the cardinal directions with an accuracy within 1/15 of a single degree of true north. This isn't just roughly north. This is a level of precision that suggests the builders possessed an advanced understanding of astronomy and geometry, potentially using the circumpolar stars to find their bearings. The sides of the pyramid also concave slightly, a subtle feature that was only discovered with modern aerial photography, meaning this intentional design was executed perfectly without any ability to view the structure from above. This combination of immense scale, impossible weight, and microscopic precision is what cements the Great Pyramid's place as the ultimate ancient mystery. It stands not as a crude heap of rocks, but as a meticulously crafted monument that whispers of a lost school of knowledge. Whether that knowledge was purely the product of human ingenuity refined over generations or something more enigmatic is a question that continues to fuel both scholarly debate and popular imagination, setting the stage for the even more bewildering projects to come. From the sun-baked sands of Egypt, we now travel to the misty green plains of southern England, to a site that is no less enigmatic. Stonehenge stands as a silent, circular sentinel, a monument whose most intriguing mystery isn't the towering sarsen stones that form its famous trilithons, but the smaller inner ring of blue stones. These stones, each weighing up to 4 tons, are the heart of the puzzle. Their journey began not in England, but in the distant Preseli Hills of Western Wales, a staggering 140 miles away. To put that distance into perspective, imagine a single file line of people laboriously moving a weight equal to a large SUV across a distance further than that between New York City and Albany, through dense forests, across raging rivers, and over mountainous terrain. And they did this over 4,000 years before the Common Era, a time when the wheel had not yet been invented in this part of the world and domesticated animals like horses were not yet used for heavy labor. The prevailing theory, born from archaeological experimentation, suggests a journey of almost unimaginable effort. It's believed that Neolithic people might have used a combination of land and water routes. The stones could have been hauled on wooden sledges or rolled on logs by large teams of people across the Welsh countryside to a waterway. They might then have been loaded onto rafts for a perilous coastal journey along the Welsh coast and up the River Avon before another grueling overland haul to the Salisbury Plain. Recent experiments have shown that moving a 1-ton stone in this manner requires the coordinated effort of well over a dozen people, and that's under ideal modern conditions with prepared paths. Scaling that up to a 4-ton monolith and then multiplying it by the 80 or so bluestones that originally stood at the site represents a logistical and social undertaking that would challenge a modern project manager. The sheer number of person-hours, the required organization for food and shelter, and the need for a sustained, shared purpose across generations is what truly baffles experts. This was more than just construction. It was a centuries-long pilgrimage for stone. Yet the how is only half the mystery. The why is perhaps even more compelling. Why would a prehistoric society commit such vast resources to transporting these specific stones from that specific quarry? It wasn't for a lack of local material. The larger sarsen stones were sourced from much closer. This suggests the bluestones held a profound significance. Geologists have discovered that the Preseli Hills are not just any quarry. The area is also home to ancient springs and was considered a sacred landscape in its own right. Some theorists propose the stones were believed to possess healing properties, turning Stonehenge into a Neolithic Lourdes. Others, noting the site's precise alignments with the solstices, argue the bluestones were integral to a sophisticated astronomical calendar, their placement allowing for precise observations of the sun and moon. This transforms Stonehenge from a simple monument into a potentially powerful engine of ritual, a place where the fabric of the cosmos could be observed and influenced. The bluestones, therefore, are not merely building materials. They are relics of a forgotten belief system, physical manifestations of a spiritual need so powerful it moved mountains, or at the very least, moved mountains of stone across an entire country. Leaving behind the monolithic mysteries of Europe, our journey takes us high into the arid plains of southern Peru, where an entirely different kind of enigma is sprawled across the desert floor. Here, the Nazca people, centuries before the rise of the Inca, created one of the most perplexing artistic and engineering projects in human history. The Nazca lines are not built upward but etched downward, a vast canvas of negative space created by removing the dark, sun-baked top layer of pebbles to reveal the lighter-colored sand beneath. This technique sounds simple in theory, but the scale and precision involved are anything but. We are not looking at small drawings. We are talking about geoglyphs so immense that they can only be truly appreciated from the vantage point of an aircraft. A hummingbird with a wingspan stretching over 300 feet, a spider perfectly detailed down to its elongated legs, a monkey with a spiraling tail. These are not rough sketches but meticulously proportioned figures carved into the earth itself. The creation process is a marvel of ancient project management. How do you design a 900-foot-long pelican when you cannot see it taking shape? The prevailing theory, supported by archaeological finds, is that the Nazca used a system of scaling up small models. They could have created a master design on a manageable scale using a grid system, and then teams of workers transposed that grid onto the desert using ropes and stakes to mark out key points. By meticulously clearing the designated paths of dark stones according to the plan, they could create the colossal outlines one section at a time. This required not only mathematical understanding, but also incredible coordination and a shared vision maintained over generations, as many of these figures would have taken a very long time to complete. The stability of the desert climate, with its minimal wind and rain, has preserved these delicate drawings for over 2 millennia, acting as a perfect natural conservator for this open-air gallery. Yet, the how is almost overshadowed by the persistent, haunting question of why. For whom were these magnificent earthworks intended if they were invisible to their creators? The most widely accepted scholarly theory posits that the lines and figures were not meant for human eyes at all, but were instead offerings to gods who dwelled in the sky. In this view, the Nazca walked the lines in ritual processions, their footsteps a form of prayer visible only to the deities above. The act of creation itself was the religious act. Another compelling theory, championed by researcher Maria Reich, suggests the lines functioned as a massive astronomical calendar. Certain lines align with the solstice sun or the rising points of significant stars and constellations, potentially marking important dates for an agricultural society dependent on seasonal cycles for planting and irrigation. The animal figures might have represented constellations in a complex cosmic map. However, the mystery deepens with more speculative ideas. The sheer scale and precision have led some to wonder if the Nazca had developed primitive hot air balloons or kites to oversee their work, though no evidence for this has been found. The most famous fringe theory suggests the lines were landing strips or signals for extraterrestrial visitors, a notion popularized by Erich von Däniken. While this captures the imagination, it is overwhelmingly dismissed by archaeologists who point to the clear cultural and spiritual context of the Nazca people. What the lines truly represent is a profound human desire to make a mark on the world, to communicate with the divine, and to encode knowledge into the very landscape. They stand as a testament to a culture that mastered their environment not to build upward toward the heavens, but to draw the heavens down upon the earth, creating a message so vast its meaning can only be grasped from the perspective of the gods themselves. Just when you thought the ancient world's mysteries were confined to stone and earth, we dive beneath the waves to uncover an object so technologically sophisticated that its very existence seems to tear a hole in the fabric of history. In the silent depths off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, sponge divers in 1900 and one stumbled upon the decaying remains of a Roman-era shipwreck. Amidst the scattered statues and amphorae, they recovered a corroded, lumpy bronze artifact that initially seemed like little more than junk. It was only years later, as museum curators began to clean and examine it, that the horrifying and wonderful truth began to emerge. This was not a piece of scrap metal. It was a complex clockwork machine, a bewildering assembly of interlocking gears, precisely cut dials, and ancient Greek inscriptions. Dated to around 100 BC, this device, now known as the Antikythera Mechanism, has been called the world's first analog computer, and it stands as a shocking anomaly in the historical record. The genius of the mechanism lies in its intricate bronze gears, at least 30 of them, though some estimates suggest the original device may have contained over 70. These were not simple cogs. They were precision-engineered with triangular teeth, arranged in a complex differential system that would not be seen again until the 19th century in modern automobiles. When a hand crank on the side was turned, this sophisticated gear train would rotate a series of dials and pointers on at least 7 different front and back faces, each protected by bronze casings. These dials didn't just tell time, they mapped the cosmos. One hand tracked the position of the sun through the zodiac, while another showed the phase of the moon, complete with a beautiful little pearl-like ball that rotated to show the lunar cycle. Another dial could predict solar and lunar eclipses with remarkable accuracy, even indicating the characteristics of those eclipses based on a repeating cycle known as the Saros cycle. But the mechanism's capabilities extend even further into the realm of the incredible. It modeled the irregular orbit of the moon, accounting for its elliptical path and varying speed, a complex motion known as lunar anomaly, using a clever pin and slot device that perfectly simulated this celestial dance. Evidence also suggests it tracked the movements of the 5 known planets Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, a feat of mathematical modeling that is staggeringly advanced. For a civilization we picture using simple sundials and water clocks, the existence of such a device is nothing short of revolutionary. It was a portable planetarium, an astronomical calculator, and a sophisticated calendar all in one, capable of showing the user the state of the heavens on any given date in the past or future. The monumental work of understanding this device fell to a science historian named Derek J. Price, who spent decades painstakingly studying the fragile, corroded fragments using X-ray and gamma-ray imaging to peer inside the calcified lumps. His research, culminating in a landmark 1974 paper, revealed the true complexity of the mechanism and shattered previous notions of ancient technology. He rightly called it a device from a different history, one where the scientific revolution might have happened 1,000 years earlier. Yet, even with modern 3D X-ray tomography providing clearer views than ever before, fundamental questions remain stubbornly unanswered. Who built this marvel? For whom was it intended? The leading theory points to the workshop of the legendary inventor Archimedes in Syracuse, though he died over a century before the ship sank. Perhaps it was made by a follower of his school of thought. Was it a rich man's toy, a teaching tool for philosophers, or a navigational aid for sailors? The most haunting question of all is what was lost. The Antikythera Mechanism was not a one-off miracle. Cicero himself wrote about a device brought to Rome by the general Marcus Marcellus that sounds eerily similar, a bronze sphere that modeled the motions of the sun, moon, and planets. This suggests such devices, while incredibly rare and valuable, were known to exist. The sinking of the Antikythera ship carrying this treasure to Rome may have inadvertently preserved the sole surviving example of a technology that was otherwise completely lost to the Dark Ages. Its discovery forces us to completely reconsider the technological ceiling of the ancient Hellenistic world, a period of explosive innovation that may have been far closer to a mechanical age than we ever dared to imagine. It is a solitary, rusting ghost from a timeline that never was, a whisper of a path not taken, and perhaps the most profound argument that our history books are still missing entire chapters of human genius. From the intricate bronze gears of a sunken Greek computer, we now voyage to one of the most remote inhabited places on Earth, a tiny volcanic speck in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. Here on Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, we encounter a mystery not of technology, but of sheer human willpower and logistical genius in the face of profound isolation. The island is a mere 63 square miles, over 2,000 miles from the nearest populated shore. It was on this isolated stage that the Rapa Nui people, beginning around 1250 CE, undertook a project of monumental ambition: the carving, transport, and erection of nearly 900 massive stone figures known as Moai. These are not small statues, they are giants, with the largest, named Paro, standing 33 feet tall and weighing a staggering 82 tons. That is heavier than a fully loaded semi-truck. The scale alone is bewildering, but the true enigma lies in the journey these giants took from the quarry to their final ceremonial platforms, known as ahu, scattered around the coastline. The story begins at the volcanic crater of Rono Raraku, which served as the primary statue factory for centuries. Even a casual walk through this area today is a haunting experience, as you are surrounded by moai in every stage of completion, some still partially attached to the living rock, others buried up to their necks in the soil, as if the workers simply walked away one day. Using only stone hand picks called toki, teams of carvers would painstakingly free the figure from the volcanic tuff, working from the top down and leaving just a narrow spine of rock attached at the back. Once the carving was complete, that final spine was broken, and the moai was carefully slid down the slopes of the quarry to begin its incredible journey across the island. The distance from the quarry to some of the most distant Ahu platforms is over 9 miles. How did a society with no wheels, no draft animals, and no metal tools move an 80-ton block of stone across 9 miles of rugged, hilly terrain? This question has fueled one of archaeology's most fascinating and hotly contested debates. For decades, the dominant theory involved a Herculean effort of pure manpower. The vision was of hundreds of islanders slowly inching the statue forward on a sledge made of logs, rolling it over a path of felled trees. This theory, while logical, began to show cracks. Experimental archaeology demonstrated that such a method would require enormous amounts of timber, and it was precisely the overuse of the island's precious palm forests that was long thought to have led to the Rapa Nui civilization's eventual collapse. This created a tragic narrative of ecological self-destruction. However, more recent research has turned this story on its head, thanks to a radical and now widely accepted theory championed by researchers Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo. They proposed a method so elegantly simple it seems almost like magic. The moai were walked. This theory, known as the walking hypothesis, suggests that the statues were not dragged horizontally but were instead engineered to move upright. Using 3 sturdy ropes, one on each side to rock the statue forward and one behind to control its descent and prevent it from tipping over, a surprisingly small team of just 18 people could create a rhythmic rocking motion. With each tilt, the team would pivot the statue forward just a few inches, effectively making the massive stone giant shuffle its own way across the landscape. Experiments with concrete replicas have proven the method's startling effectiveness, showing that a multi-ton moai could be moved several hundred feet in just minutes. This method would explain the many moai found abandoned along ancient roads, some of which have broken and fallen in a way that suggests they were upright during transport. It also aligns beautifully with local Rapa Nui oral tradition, which has long contained stories of the statues walking to their platforms, a phrase that earlier archaeologists had dismissed as purely mythological. The implications are profound. The walking method requires far less timber and far fewer people than the sledge theory, suggesting the Rapa Nui were not ecologically reckless but were in fact brilliant engineers who devised an incredibly efficient solution to an immense problem. Their achievement is a testament to human ingenuity, a powerful example of how a deep understanding of physics, balance, and coordinated effort can overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. The moai were not symbols of a society's collapse, but the ultimate expression of its cultural and spiritual vitality, their stern gazes facing inland to watch over the clans that, through sheer collective will, made them walk. After marveling at the walking giants of Easter Island, we now travel to the eastern Mediterranean, to a site where the stones are so colossal they make the moai seem almost portable. In the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon stands the magnificent Roman temple complex of Baalbek, known in antiquity as Heliopolis, the city of the sun. While the soaring Corinthian columns and ornate carvings are a testament to Roman architectural grandeur, the true, jaw-dropping mystery lies not in what they built upon, but what they built with. Beneath the visible Roman structures is a megalithic terrace, and 3 of its foundation blocks, known as the trilithon, represent one of the most profound and unresolved engineering puzzles on the planet. Each of these limestone behemoths measures approximately 64 feet in length, 14 feet in height, and 12 feet in width. Their weight is estimated to be a staggering 800 to 1,000 tons each. To put that almost incomprehensible weight into perspective, it is the equivalent of 3 fully loaded Boeing 747 jumbo jets or 250 full-sized elephants. Moving a single one of these stones would be a formidable challenge for modern construction teams with hydraulic cranes and heavy-duty transport vehicles. The fact that they were quarried, moved over a mile, and then lifted and positioned with millimeter precision around 2,000 years ago defies all conventional understanding of Roman capabilities. The journey of these stones begins at the quarry, located roughly a third of a mile away from the temple site. Here, the evidence of this Herculean effort is frozen in time. The quarry is home to an even larger block nicknamed the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, which was partially cut but never moved. This monstrous piece of stone measures 69 feet by 16 feet by 13 feet 10 inches, weighing an estimated 1,250 tons. Just the act of cutting it free from the bedrock using simple hammers, chisels, and wedges represents a years-long endeavor for an army of workers. But the quarrying is the easy part. The real mind-bending challenge is transport. The Romans are known to have moved large stones using wooden sledges, rollers, and capstans powered by human or animal labor. This worked for the hundreds of tons of obelisks and columns found throughout their empire. However, the physics of moving a 1,000-ton block is not just a linear increase in difficulty. It is an exponential one. The ground pressure would crush any wooden sledge or roller into splinters. The ropes needed to pull it, even with teams of hundreds of oxen, would have been of a thickness and strength that may not have even been possible to manufacture at the time. Pathway itself would have needed to be an immensely reinforced and perfectly level road, an engineering project in its own right for which no evidence remains. This leads to the central, burning question. If the Romans, with all their documented engineering prowess, seemingly lacked the technology for such a feat, who actually put these stones in place? This is where the mystery deepens into the realm of high speculation. Some archaeologists, like Jean-Pierre Adam, have proposed ingenious but complex Roman methods involving elaborate systems of levers, counterweights, and massive wooden lifting frameworks. Yet, even these theories often feel inadequate to the task. Another compelling school of thought suggests that the Romans did not quarry or place the trilithon at all. Instead, they may have built their magnificent temple complex on top of a pre-existing, much older megalithic foundation. Proponents of this theory point to the fact that the massive blocks show signs of weathering that could predate the Roman structures. They speculate that a forgotten, advanced civilization, perhaps from the Bronze Age or even earlier, could have been responsible for this cyclopean masonry. This unknown culture would have possessed a lost technology or understanding of stone moving that has since vanished from history. Their achievement later co-opted and built upon by the Romans who, for all their brilliance, were merely the last architects to leave their mark on this sacred site. The precision of the placement is the final layer of this enigma. These are not rough, irregular boulders. The trilithon stones are perfectly dressed with straight edges and smooth faces. They were fitted together with such exactitude that, like the Inca walls in Peru, you cannot slip a piece of paper between them. This accuracy is difficult enough to achieve on a small scale with hand tools. To maintain it on a block the size of a small apartment building, after moving it over uneven ground, is a demonstration of skill that borders on the supernatural. The entire platform was designed to be earthquake-resistant, its immense weight and perfect fitting creating a stable base that has survived millennia of seismic activity in the geologically active valley. The Baalbek megaliths stand as a silent, daunting challenge to our historical narrative. They force us to confront an uncomfortable possibility that there may be gaps in our understanding of the ancient world, periods of technological flourishing that left no written records, only impossibly large stones that whisper of a knowledge we have yet to rediscover. Leaving behind the cyclopean stones of Baalbek, we ascend high into the thin air of the Peruvian Andes, to a fortress that seems to defy not just invaders, but the very laws of gravity and geology. Towering over the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, the walls of Sacsayhuamán are a breathtaking display of stonework so precise, so audacious, that it feels less like a human construction and more like a natural phenomenon, a mountain that decided to reassemble itself into a geometric puzzle. Built primarily in the 15th century under the reign of the Inca Pachacuti, this was no crude defensive barrier. It was a statement of power, a religious sanctuary, and perhaps the ultimate expression of the Incas' profound, almost supernatural relationship with stone. The most immediately striking feature is the sheer scale of the individual blocks. While not quite reaching the 1,000-ton monsters of Baalbek, the stones here are still colossal, with the largest estimated to weigh well over 360 tons. These are not simple rectangles. Each block is a unique, irregular polygon, a giant piece of a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle with dozens of sides and angles. Yet they are fitted together with a precision that is utterly confounding. The joints between these behemoths are so seamless that, as the famous saying goes, you cannot slip a razor blade, a piece of paper, or even a single human hair between them. This perfection was achieved without iron tools, without the wheel, and without mortar. The Inca stonemasons used only harder stones, bronze, and copper tools to pound, grind, and abrade the softer andesite and limestone into these impossible shapes. The prevailing theory is a process of trial and error where a block would be roughly shaped, placed next to its neighbor, and the high spots would be marked with a red pigment. It would then be lowered, the spots ground down, and the process repeated over and over and over until the fit was flawless. The mind reels at the patience and skill required, imagining teams of workers spending months or even years on the perfect placement of a single stone. This leads to the next great mystery: movement. How did they transport these multi-ton stones from quarries miles away, up and down the steep, rugged slopes of the Andes? The answer lies in a combination of incredible manpower and ingenious engineering. The Inca had an extensive network of roads and a social system of labor tribute called mita, which could mobilize thousands of men for state projects. The stones were likely hauled on wooden sledges and rollers along prepared causeways, but the real genius might have been in their use of the landscape itself. Some researchers suggest they built long, temporary earthen ramps against the hillsides, dragging the stones up these inclines to their final positions. Once in place, the final fitting could begin. The absence of any obvious drag marks on the stones suggests a highly organized process using ropes, levers, and log rollers to manipulate these giants with a delicate precision that belies their immense weight. The true brilliance of Sacsayhuamán, however, is not just in its construction, but in its performance. This fortress was built in one of the most seismically active regions on Earth. The Inca understood earthquakes not as anomalies, but as a constant fact of life. Their architecture reflects a deep, empirical understanding of how to survive them. The walls are not straight, they zigzag in a dramatic series of switchbacks. This design alone would have provided structural strength, but the real secret is in the masonry itself. The polygonal, mortar-free construction is essentially a flexible retaining wall. During an earthquake, the ground shakes and shifts. A rigid, mortared wall would crack and collapse under the shear forces. But the stones of Sacsayhuamán are allowed to dance. They jiggle and settle minutely, dissipating the seismic energy through their complex joints. When the shaking stops, they simply settle back into a new, equally stable position. It is a passive seismic damping system designed centuries before modern engineers even began to understand the physics of earthquakes. This is not primitive guesswork. It is advanced engineering principles derived from centuries of observation and innovation. Sacsayhuamán, therefore, is far more than a pile of well-cut rocks. It is a testament to a culture that viewed stone not as an inert material, but as a living entity to be persuaded and respected. The Inca believed the stones themselves had a spirit, a kame, and that the master masons could literally communicate with them to convince them to fit together. In a way, their technological achievement proves this philosophy true. They didn't force the stone into submission with brute force and hard tools. They worked with its nature, understanding its properties on a fundamental level to create structures that were not just built to last, but built to endure the very wrath of the earth gods they worshipped. It stands today not as a ruin, but as a perfectly functioning machine, a silent, stoic guardian that has withstood centuries of tremors, a monument to a forgotten science that seamlessly blended spiritual belief with empirical genius. Just when we think we have the timeline of human progress neatly mapped out, archaeology has a way of humbling us with a discovery so profound it shatters the very foundations of our historical narrative. Our journey now takes us to a windswept hilltop in southeastern Turkey, to a site that doesn't just add a new chapter to history, but effectively rips up the first page and demands we start the book all over again. This is Göbekli Tepe, a complex so ancient it predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years and the Great Pyramid of Giza by a staggering 7 millennia. Dated to around 9600 BCE, this is not merely the oldest temple in the world. It is a conceptual bomb dropped on the conventional story of civilization itself. For over a century, historians and archaeologists have taught a straightforward, logical progression of human development. First, around 12,000 years ago, humans learned to farm. This Neolithic revolution, as it's called, allowed for a stable, sedentary life with surplus food. This surplus, in turn, freed up time and resources for people to specialize in other tasks: leadership, craftsmanship, religion, leading to complex social hierarchies, villages, towns, and eventually, the first great cities and their monumental architecture. In this story, organized religion and large-scale construction are the result of agriculture. Göbekli Tepe turns this entire sequence on its head. Here, we have the world's first and largest megalithic architecture, a breathtaking temple complex of carved pillars arranged in great stone circles, built not by settled farmers, but by bands of nomadic hunter-gatherers. The implications are staggering. It suggests that it wasn't agriculture that made religion and complex society possible, but perhaps the human drive to come together for a shared spiritual purpose that actually invented agriculture. The scale of the achievement is almost incomprehensible. The site is composed of multiple circular enclosures, each defined by a ring of massive, T-shaped limestone pillars. The largest of these monoliths stand over 18 feet tall and weigh between 15 and 20 tons. Quarrying these pillars from the local bedrock using only flint tools was a monumental task in itself. Then they had to be transported, likely using log rollers and ropes, from the quarry pits to the hilltop nearly 300 feet away. But the true marvel is not just the moving of the stones, it is the artistry upon them. These are not plain, functional posts. They are meticulously shaped and adorned with a stunning menagerie of carved reliefs: fearsome lions, sneaking foxes, charging boars, slithering snakes, and flocks of water birds are rendered with a clarity and sophistication that would be impressive in any era, let alone one that predates writing, pottery, and metal tools by thousands of years. The pillars themselves are abstract, stylized human figures, with arms, hands, and loincloths carved into the stone, their flat tops perhaps once supporting massive roof beams. This was not a haphazard arrangement. It was a consciously designed sacred space, constructed with a symbolic language that was clearly deeply understood by its creators. The man who dedicated his life to unraveling this mystery was the late German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, who led the excavations from 1994 until his death in 2014. Schmidt saw Göbekli Tepe not as a village or a settlement, but as a purely ceremonial center, a cathedral on a hill. There is no evidence of permanent domestic structures, no hearths, no houses, no trash pits for everyday living. Instead, evidence points to it being a seasonal gathering place. Different groups of hunter-gatherers who normally roamed across a vast territory would have been compelled to converge on this spot at specific times of the year, drawn by a shared belief system. Coordinating the labor required to build such a place would have necessitated a sophisticated level of social organization previously thought impossible for pre-agricultural societies. Someone had to plan the design, direct the labor, and feed the workers. This suggests the emergence of a priestly or shamanistic class with the authority to command such a project. This brings us to the site's most revolutionary implication, the catalyst for farming. The area around Göbekli Tepe is also the genetic homeland of both domesticated einkorn wheat and the first domesticated pigs, sheep, and cattle. Schmidt proposed a fascinating theory that the need to supply large, recurring groups of people gathered at this ritual center with predictable food and drink may have directly spurred the domestication of wild plants and animals. Imagine the challenge of feeding hundreds of workers and pilgrims. The sheer logistical demand could have pushed these nomadic people to begin cultivating wild grasses to create a reliable food source and to manage herds of animals for predictable meat supplies. In this light, Göbekli Tepe is not an anomaly, it is the very catalyst. It was the human impulse to worship, to create something larger than themselves, that provided the practical necessity which gave birth to agriculture. The temple came first, and the farm followed. This single site forces us to completely rewrite the origin story of civilization, suggesting that the genesis of our settled world may not lie in the practical need for food, but in the profound, intangible human yearning to connect with the divine and build a legacy in stone. While the Incas were mastering seismic resistance high in the Andes, and the builders of Göbekli Tepe were rewriting the origins of civilization, another ancient culture was perfecting a material science so advanced that our own modern version pales in comparison. We often think of concrete as a quintessentially modern material, the literal foundation of our cities and infrastructure. Yet, the stark reality is that our concrete has a critical, embarrassing weakness, especially when compared to the miraculous substance developed by the ancient Romans. Walk along any modern coastline and you'll likely see the evidence: crumbling piers, spalling seawalls, and rusting rebar exposed by concrete that has been relentlessly attacked by the sea. Salt water is the ultimate nemesis of modern Portland cement, chemically breaking it down in a process that often requires multi-billion-dollar repairs within just a few decades. Now travel to the coast of Italy and dive beneath the waves off the ancient port of Caesarea Maritima or the harbor of Portus Cossanus, built around 100 BCE. Here you will find something astonishing. 2,000-year-old Roman concrete piers and breakwaters are not only still intact, but they have actually grown stronger over the centuries, their resistance to the pounding waves increasing with time. This isn't just durability, It's a form of alchemy, a chemical recipe that we have been utterly unable to replicate. The secret to this supermaterial lies not in a single ingredient, but in a revolutionary chemical process. Modern concrete is primarily based on Portland cement, a mixture that requires heating limestone and clay to extremely high temperatures, a process that is notoriously energy-intensive and contributes significantly to global carbon emissions. The Romans used a far different and more ingenious formula. Their concrete, known as opus cementitium, was a simple but profound mixture of lime, volcanic ash, and chunks of rock or brick. The true magic, however, was in the specific type of volcanic ash they used, a material they called pulvis puteolinus, named after the deposits found near the modern town of Pozzuoli. This wasn't just any ash, it was a volcanic tuff rich in aluminous minerals and a rare key component, philipsite. When this ash was mixed with lime and seawater, a spectacular chemical reaction began, one that continues to this day. Instead of eroding, the Roman concrete undergoes a process called post-pozzolanic crystallization. Seawater percolates through the concrete, reacting with the volcanic ash and lime to form rare, plate-like crystals of a mineral called aluminous tobermorite and a porous, rock-like framework of philipsite. This is where the Roman genius becomes truly apparent. In modern concrete, cracks are a death sentence. They allow more water and chloride ions to penetrate, reaching the steel rebar inside, causing it to rust, expand, and explode the concrete from within. Roman concrete has no rebar. Its strength comes from its internal chemistry. When seawater enters tiny microcracks in the Roman material, it doesn't accelerate decay. It actually triggers the formation of these new, interlocking crystals, which effectively self-heal the cracks and add a new layer of resilient mineral reinforcement. The concrete doesn't just resist the sea, it incorporates it, using the seawater as a crucial chemical ingredient to become harder and more resilient with each passing century. It is a living, growing material, a stark contrast to our own static, decaying concoction. Unlocking this ancient secret has become a holy grail for modern materials scientists, and one of the leading figures in this quest is geologist Marie Jackson from the University of Utah. For years, her team has been meticulously analyzing cores drilled from Roman maritime structures, using advanced tools like X-ray microdiffraction and electron microscopes to map the nanoscale structure of the 2,000-year-old concrete. They have successfully recreated the Roman recipe in the lab, watching as the same rare tobermorite crystals form. However, achieving the same legendary durability on an industrial scale remains a formidable challenge. The specific volcanic ash from Pozzuoli has unique properties that are not universally available, and the Roman process required a very specific mixing and placement technique, often involving packing the concrete into wooden forms underwater to ensure proper curing. The slow, continuous curing process over decades is also incompatible with our modern demand for rapid construction. The Romans were playing a long game, building for eternity, while we often build for the next fiscal quarter. The implications of successfully reviving this technology are profound. Imagine constructing seawalls, flood barriers, and offshore energy platforms that become stronger with age instead of requiring constant, expensive maintenance. It would revolutionize coastal engineering and dramatically reduce the carbon footprint of construction, as the Roman process requires far less energy than producing Portland cement. The enduring legacy of Roman concrete is a humbling lesson in humility. It demonstrates that advanced technology is not always about complexity and digitalization. Sometimes it's about a deep, almost intuitive understanding of natural chemistry and a willingness to work with nature's processes rather than against them. Their harbors, still standing strong after 2 millennia, are not just ruins, they are active, functioning scientific experiments, silently continuing their chemical dance with the sea and waiting for us to finally catch up to their 2,000-year-old innovation. Yet another testament to the Mesoamerican genius for marrying the celestial with the terrestrial can be found not far from the modern chaos of Mexico City, in the breathtakingly ordered ruins of Teotihuacan. This was not merely a city, it was a vast stone embodiment of the cosmos itself, a carefully orchestrated urban machine designed to mirror the heavens and harness their power. Flourishing between 100 BCE and 250 CE, at its zenith, Teotihuacan was one of the largest cities on Earth, a sprawling metropolis that was home to over 100,000 people. What makes this achievement so utterly bewildering is that this immense, perfectly planned urban center was built by a civilization that left behind no deciphered written records. We do not know what they called themselves, the name of a single ruler, or their language. Teotihuacan meaning the place where the gods were created, in the later Aztec language, is a name given by awe-struck successors who stumbled upon the empty, majestic ruins centuries after it was mysteriously abandoned. Every insight we have into this city comes not from ancient texts, but from the stones themselves, and they tell a story of astronomical and urban planning sophistication that is nothing short of miraculous. The moment you walk down the city's central artery, the massive Avenue of the Dead, you are participating in a ritual alignment that is thousands of years old. This causeway, stretching for miles and flanked by the ruins of temples and platforms, is not oriented to true north, south, east, or west, as one might expect. Instead, it is deliberately skewed 15.5 degrees east of north. For decades, this was dismissed as a topographical necessity or a simple error in planning. But we now understand that this precise, intentional orientation was a direct reflection of the Teotihuacano worldview, the most compelling theory, supported by extensive archaeological and astronomical analysis, suggests the avenue was aligned with the setting point of the Pleiades star cluster on a key date in the Mesoamerican calendar. The Pleiades, known to the Aztecs as Chanquistli or the marketplace, held profound significance across Mesoamerican cultures, often associated with renewal, the agricultural cycle, and the beginning of the new year. By anchoring their entire city to this celestial event, the builders were ensuring their urban plan was in perpetual harmony with the cycles of the universe, turning the entire metropolis into a giant astronomical instrument. This celestial choreography is most powerfully expressed in the positioning of its two colossal pyramids. The Pyramid of the Sun, one of the largest structures of the ancient world, is not centered on the Avenue of the Dead. Its placement seems almost asymmetrical until you understand its purpose. Research has shown that from the pyramid's summit on the day the sun passed directly overhead, a day of immense ritual importance, an observer would see it set directly behind the sacred peak of Cerro Gordo, the great goddess mountain that was likely considered a major earth deity. The pyramid was not just aligned with the sky, it was a pivot point connecting the heavens, the human-built world, and the powerful natural landscape. Directly north, the Pyramid of the Moon sits at the northern terminus of the Avenue of the Dead, its form elegantly echoing the shape of the mountain Cerro Gordo behind it. This creates a visual hierarchy from the human-made temple to the natural sacred mountain, a deliberate blurring of the lines between the built environment and the divine natural world. The entire city is a complex, three-dimensional map of a spiritual and astronomical belief system. Beyond the cosmic alignments, the sheer logistical genius of Teotihuacan's urban planning is a mystery in its own right. How did an apparently leaderless society archaeology has found no evidence of a single, all-powerful ruler's palace coordinate the construction of such a vast and standardized city? The layout is a masterclass in zoning and social organization. The city was divided into distinct districts with dedicated areas for artisans, merchants, and a vast number of multi-family apartment compounds, some of which featured sophisticated drainage systems and central courtyards. The standardization of these compounds, built to a recurring module, suggests a central planning authority with the power to enforce building codes, yet no evidence of a royal court or central administration complex has been found. This has led to fascinating theories that Teotihuacan may have been governed by a collective, perhaps a council of priestly or military elites, rather than a singular king, making its cohesive vision even more remarkable. They managed a massive, diverse population, sourced basalt and obsidian from distant quarries, and organized the labor for monuments that have endured for 2 millennia, all without the dynastic records that guided the Egyptians or the detailed inscriptions of the Maya. Teotihuacan stands as a silent, majestic enigma, a city built by anonymous geniuses who understood that the most powerful legacy is not a name carved in stone, but a universe perfectly mirrored in the layout of a city, ensuring their harmony with the gods would resonate long after their own identity was forgotten by time. Now we journey into the realm of legend, to a wonder so captivating that its very existence hangs in a delicate balance between historical account and poetic myth. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the famed 7 wonders of the ancient world, present a unique kind of mystery. Unlike the stone giants of Egypt or the celestial cities of Mesoamerica, whose physical remains we can touch and measure, the gardens are a phantom. They live almost entirely in the words of classical authors who wrote about them centuries after they supposedly flourished, yet no definitive archaeological evidence has ever been found in Babylon to confirm they were anything more than a magnificent story. This makes them not just an engineering puzzle, but a profound historical detective story, a tantalizing glimpse into how ancient wonders can be born from a blend of fact, exaggeration, and sheer human imagination. The primary sources that fuel this legend are Greek and Roman historians, most notably Strabo and Diodorus Siculus, who described the gardens in the 1st century BC, hundreds of years after they were said to have been built. According to their accounts, the gardens were a breathtaking artificial mountain of greenery, constructed around 600 BC by the great King Nebuchadnezzar II as a gift for his Median wife, Queen Amytis, who missed the lush, mountainous landscape of her homeland. Strabo paints a vivid picture of a structure rising in step terraces, supported by vast vaulted arches and beams, strong enough to hold the immense weight of soil deep enough to accommodate the roots of large trees. The most incredible feat, however, was not the structure itself, but its lifeblood, water. In the arid climate of Mesopotamia, where rain is scarce, maintaining such a verdant paradise would have required a hydraulic system of genius-level complexity. Ancient texts describe a sophisticated irrigation machine, likely a chain pump or a continuous screw mechanism similar to the Archimedes screw, though predating Archimedes by centuries. This device would have been operated by teams of men to lift water from the nearby Euphrates River all the way to the highest terrace, from where it would cascade down through the gardens in a series of channels, waterfalls, and rivulets, sustaining a miniature ecosystem high above the desert plains. The sheer scale of this operation is what pushes the story into the realm of the nearly impossible. The water requirements for such a garden would have been colossal, far beyond what a simple manual pump could realistically provide. Some modern estimates suggest the system would need to lift thousands of gallons of water every single day. Furthermore, the engineering challenges of waterproofing the massive brick terraces to prevent catastrophic leakage and structural collapse would have been immense. The Babylonians were master hydrologists famed for their canals and dikes, but creating a constantly dripping, self-sustaining mountain of vegetation represents a leap in technology that seems almost anachronistic. This has led many archaeologists, including the renowned Assyriologist Dr. Stephanie Dalley of the University of Oxford, to propose a compelling alternative theory. Perhaps the gardens were real, but they were not in Babylon at all. Dalley's extensive research points to the Assyrian capital of Nineveh, where the great King Sennacherib left detailed inscriptions and reliefs describing a vast and sophisticated garden watered by an elaborate system of canals and a huge water-raising screw made of bronze, a technology he explicitly claims to have invented. It is possible that over centuries, the memory of this Assyrian marvel was geographically shifted and attributed to the more famous city of Babylon by Greek historians, blurring the lines between two magnificent Mesopotamian empires. This leads us to the core of the mystery, the frustrating lack of physical evidence at the site of Babylon itself. Extensive excavations, including those led by the German archaeologist Robert Koldewey in the early 20th century, have uncovered much of the ancient city. They found the remains of Nebuchadnezzar's palace, the foundation of the Great Ishtar Gate, and the outlines of the massive city walls. Koldewey believed he had found the base of the gardens, a peculiar area with 14 large rooms with vaulted ceilings and an adjacent well that he theorized was part of the irrigation system. However, this interpretation is far from universally accepted. Other scholars argue the structure was merely a warehouse. The complete absence of any contemporary Babylonian cuneiform tablets that mention the gardens is perhaps the most damning evidence against their existence in that location. For a king like Nebuchadnezzar, who left behind extensive inscriptions boasting of all his other grand construction projects, the failure to mention what would have been his greatest achievement is deeply suspicious. So, does this mean the Hanging Gardens are a complete fiction? Not necessarily. They may represent a powerful amalgamation of multiple real wonders from across the region, a composite legend that grew in the telling. The human mind is drawn to the sublime and the seemingly impossible, and the idea of a lush, floating garden in the heart of a desert is a powerful symbol of humanity's triumph over nature. It speaks to our deepest desires to create paradise on earth, to bend the elements to our will for beauty's sake. Whether the gardens were a factual marvel of Babylonian engineering, a misattributed Assyrian achievement, or a beautiful myth born from travelers' tales, their legacy is undeniably real. They force us to confront the fuzzy boundary between history and story, reminding us that sometimes the most enduring wonders are those built not from stone and mortar, but from the timeless materials of imagination and awe. From the sun-scorched plains of Mesopotamia and its legendary gardens, we now descend deep into the earth, into a hidden world of breathtaking scale and ingenuity. In the heart of Turkey's Cappadocia region, a landscape famed for its fairy chimneys and soft volcanic rock, lies an engineering marvel of an entirely different order, the Derinkuyu underground city. This is not a simple cave or a small refuge. It is a vast, multi-level subterranean metropolis, a labyrinthine complex carved entirely by hand that could shelter an astonishing 20,000 people indefinitely from any threat that roamed the surface above. Constructed and expanded over centuries, with its deepest layers likely dating back to the Byzantine era around the 8th century CE, Derinkuyu represents one of the most ambitious and complex underground projects ever undertaken in the ancient world, a testament to human resilience and an almost supernatural understanding of subterranean engineering. The moment you step inside, the sheer comprehensiveness of the city becomes overwhelming. This was not a mere hole in the ground. It was a fully functional, self-sustaining biosphere. The explored structure descends 18 levels deep into the earth, though only 8 are currently accessible to the public, reaching a depth of over 280 feet. Within this vast space, architects of the dark carved out everything a large community would need to survive for months at a time. There are living quarters, complete with sleeping niches carved into the walls, spacious communal rooms for gatherings and cooking, stables for livestock, cellars for storing vast quantities of food and wine in huge earthenware jars, and even dedicated chapels with vaulted ceilings and stone altars for worship. The city contained numerous kitchens, identifiable by their soot-blackened ceilings, and an ingenious network of deep, hand-dug wells that tapped into the natural water table far below, providing a fresh, independent water source that could not be poisoned or cut off by a surface siege. Every necessity for life, from sustenance to spirituality, was provided for deep within the safety of the rock. But the true genius of Derinkuyu, and the answer to how such a dense population could survive buried alive, lies in its sophisticated mechanical systems. The most critical of these was ventilation. Without a constant supply of fresh air, 20,000 people would have suffocated within hours. The ancient engineers addressed this with a brilliant and simple solution: a series of at least 52 meticulously engineered ventilation shafts. These narrow chimneys, some stretching the entire height of the complex from the deepest level to the surface, acted as the city's lungs. They created a constant, passive airflow, drawing stale air up and out while pulling fresh, clean air down into the deepest chambers. This natural convection current ensured the atmosphere remained breathable, a feat of environmental engineering that would be impressive even today. The second masterstroke was security. The entire city could be sealed off from the inside in a matter of moments. Throughout the passageways, particularly at key choke points, massive, millstone-like doors were placed. These were not ordinary gates. They were single, circular slabs of solid volcanic rock, weighing up to 1,000 pounds and standing nearly 5 feet high. They were designed to roll perfectly into place from the inside, blocking corridors completely. Each door featured a small, central hole that could serve multiple purposes: as a peek hole to identify friends or foes, as a port for launching a spear at invaders, or even as a handy grip for maneuvering the colossal stone wheel. The method of construction is a mystery that speaks volumes about the determination and skill of its creators. The rock of Cappadocia, known as tuff, is the key. Formed from volcanic ash compacted over millennia, it is soft enough to be worked with simple metal picks, shovels, and chisels, yet remarkably stable once excavated. This allowed for relatively rapid excavation, but the planning involved was extraordinarily complex. How did they coordinate the digging of multiple levels without causing collapses? How did they know exactly where to place their ventilation shafts to ensure they reached the surface? The answer likely lies in generations of accumulated knowledge. The first excavations were probably small cellars or storage rooms that were gradually expanded and connected over centuries, eventually merging into a vast network. The work would have been painstaking and dangerous, carried out in near-total darkness, illuminated only by tiny oil lamps whose soot stains can still be seen on the ceilings today. The excavated rock itself posed a massive logistical problem. Millions of cubic feet of rubble had to be secretly disposed of on the surface without drawing attention to the hidden city's location, likely being scattered in nearby valleys or used to construct ordinary-looking surface dwellings. The purpose of Derinkuyu is as fascinating as its construction. While often associated with the Byzantine era as a refuge for Christians fleeing Arab raids, its origins are probably much older. Some scholars suggest the first levels were carved by the Phrygians or even the Hittites over 1,000 years earlier, with later cultures expanding and refining the complex. It served as the ultimate bunker, a place where entire communities could vanish from sight, waiting out times of war, religious persecution, or other existential threats. The very existence of Derinkuyu and the nearby network of dozens of other interconnected underground cities speaks to a region caught in a perpetual cycle of conflict and a population whose survival depended on their ability to literally disappear into the landscape. It is a monument not to empire building or celestial worship, but to pure, unadulterated survival. It stands as a powerful reminder that ancient ingenuity was often driven by necessity, resulting in a hidden, underground world that represents one of the most practical and awe-inspiring infrastructure projects ever conceived. Leaving behind the hidden labyrinths of Turkey, we now travel east to a site that represents not a city of the living, but a meticulously crafted empire for the dead. In 1974, farmers digging a well in Shaanxi Province, China, stumbled upon one of the most spectacular archaeological discoveries of all time, the terracotta army of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. This was not a mere collection of statues. It was a subterranean military deployment on an industrial scale, a project of such staggering ambition and organizational complexity that it perfectly encapsulates the immense power and terrifying efficiency of the nascent Chinese Empire. Constructed in the 3rd century BCE, this clay legion was designed to accompany and protect the emperor in the afterlife, a testament to one man's ego and the limitless resources of the state he forged through conquest. The sheer scale of the undertaking is the first layer of this mystery. To date, archaeologists have uncovered an estimated 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots with 520 horses, and 150 cavalry horses, and this is believed to be only a fraction of the total necropolis. Each figure is life-sized, standing between 5 feet 8 inches and 6 feet 2 inches tall, and each one is utterly unique. This is not mass production in the modern sense. It is mass customization on a level that seems almost impossible for the era. The faces of the soldiers are not stamped from a few dozen molds. Through detailed analysis, researchers have identified that the artisans created a modular system. The heads, limbs, and torsos were cast from a limited number of molds, but the critical, identifying features, the faces, hairstyles, expressions, and even the intricate details of their armor and footwear, were all individually sculpted by hand in wet clay before firing. This means 8,000 individual portraits, each with a distinct personality, from the young, eager recruit to the grizzled, battle-hardened veteran. The organizational skill required to manage this army of sculptors, to ensure consistency in size and form while encouraging artistic individuality, points to a bureaucratic and logistical apparatus of breathtaking sophistication. This was a state project that would have required vast workshops, a managed supply chain for clay and pigments, and a huge, coordinated labor force of master potters, each leaving their own subtle signature on eternity. The process of creating these figures was a marvel of ancient industrial engineering. The bodies were made using a sophisticated combination of slab construction and coil techniques, all designed to be hollow to prevent them from exploding in the kiln. The average soldier weighs nearly 600 pounds, and firing such large, hollow earthenware sculptures without cracking or warping required a profound understanding of kiln dynamics, temperature control, and clay chemistry. After firing, the figures were painted in vivid, lifelike colors: pink skin, black hair, green, blue, and red uniforms. Traces of these pigments still remain on some figures, though they famously oxidize and flake away within minutes of exposure to the air, a heartbreaking loss of their original splendor. The figures were also armed with real, functional weapons, thousands of bronze swords, spears, and crossbow triggers. Astonishingly, many of these bronze blades were found to be still sharp and remarkably well preserved, thanks to an advanced chromium oxide coating that protected them from rust for over 2 millennia, a form of anti-corrosion technology that would not be reinvented in the West until the 20th century. But the Terracotta Army, as awe-inspiring as it is merely the guardian of the main event, a prize that has tantalized archaeologists and historians for decades and remains stubbornly hidden from view. According to the grand historian Sima Qian, writing a century after the emperor's death, the main tomb itself is a microcosmic universe. He describes a vast underground palace with a ceiling inlaid with pearls to represent the stars and constellations, and panoramic maps of the empire on the floor, with rivers and oceans simulated by flowing mercury. This account has long been dismissed as fanciful mythology, but modern scientific surveys have added a shocking layer of credibility. Soil samples taken from the enormous, man-made mound that covers the tomb have revealed mercury concentrations significantly higher than those in the surrounding area. Remote sensing technology has even detected what appears to be large, regular movements of liquid metal deep beneath the soil, suggesting that Sima Qian's description of mercury rivers may have been based in fact. The implications are staggering. It suggests the Qin possessed not only advanced chemical knowledge to source and handle vast quantities of this toxic liquid metal, but also the mechanical engineering skill to create a system that could keep it flowing, perhaps through some form of perpetual motion pump or a cleverly designed circulatory system powered by hydraulics. This revelation makes the decision by the Chinese government to leave the main tomb unexcavated one of the most prudent in modern archaeology. The potential dangers are immense, from the structural integrity of the buried palace to the very real threat of lethal mercury vapor exposure. Furthermore, the technology to safely excavate and preserve whatever lies within, especially the potentially exquisite but fragile organic artifacts like silks, wooden items, and the emperor's own remains, simply may not exist yet. The tomb of Qin Shi Huang is therefore a unique paradox, a known, located treasure chest of unimaginable historical value, deliberately left sealed, a promise to future generations. It stands as the ultimate symbol of the Qin dynasty's legacy, a blend of terrifying power, unparalleled organizational skill, and a technological prowess that seems to leap straight out of legend, all waiting silently in the dark, guarded by an eternal army of clay, for the day we are finally wise enough to look inside. Crossing the English Channel from the enigmatic stone circles of Britain, we arrive on the windswept coast of Brittany in northwestern France, where an even more expansive and bewildering megalithic landscape stretches across the countryside. The Karnak alignments are not a single cohesive monument like Stonehenge, but a vast, sprawling gallery of granite, a project of such immense scale and ambiguity that it has captivated and confounded observers for centuries. Imagine not just a circle, but entire fields, entire neighborhoods, dominated by thousands of standing stones arranged in seemingly endless parallel rows that march across the terrain for over 2.5 miles. With the oldest stones erected around 4,500 BCE during the Middle Neolithic period, this is one of the oldest and most extensive megalithic sites on Earth, a silent, sprawling riddle carved from the very bedrock of prehistoric Europe. The sheer numbers are difficult to grasp until you stand among them. There are not dozens nor hundreds, but over 3,000 individual menhirs or standing stones, arranged in 3 primary groups known as the Manek, Kermario, and Kerleskan alignments. The Manek alignment alone features 1,099 stones arranged in 11 converging rows, like a gigantic stone army forever frozen in formation. The stones vary dramatically in size, from small, squat markers barely a foot tall to towering giants like the Manio giant, which stands at over 20 feet high. This variation is not random. It appears to be part of a deliberate design, with the largest stones often positioned at the wider, western ends of the rows, gradually decreasing in height as they progress eastward. The logistics of sourcing, shaping, and erecting this army of monoliths is a puzzle that speaks to a highly organized and motivated society. The granite was sourced locally, but moving multi-ton blocks from the quarries to their precise positions would have required a coordinated effort of hundreds of people using wooden sledges, rollers, and rope made from plant fibers or animal hide. The investment of time and communal energy is almost unimaginable, representing a project that would have spanned generations, all for a purpose that remains tantalizingly just out of reach. This, of course, is the central, haunting question of Karnak. Why? What compelled these Neolithic farmers to undertake such a back-breaking, centuries-long endeavor? The most persistent and compelling theory is an astronomical one. Many of the stone rows show clear alignments with the rising and setting sun during the solstices and equinoxes. The entire layout of the Karnak complex may function as a gigantic celestial calendar, a stone computer designed to track the passing seasons, predict lunar and solar cycles, and mark dates critical to an agricultural society's survival. This knowledge would have been power, granting a priestly or scholarly class the ability to dictate the timing of planting and harvest, and to conduct rituals that ensured the sun's return after the long, dark winter. This theory transforms the site from a random collection of rocks into a sacred landscape, an interface between the earthly and the cosmic. Yet, astronomy is not the only explanation. Another school of thought proposes a more social or territorial function. The orderly, parallel rows could have served as a processional way for religious ceremonies, a path walked by pilgrims during seasonal gatherings. Alternatively, they might have been a powerful statement of territorial control, a visible, undeniable claim by a powerful clan or culture over the landscape. The effort required to erect them would have demonstrated the group's wealth, manpower, and divine favor to any potential rivals. There are also more speculative, folkloric explanations. One enduring local legend, born in the 19th century, claims the stones are a Roman legion turned to stone by the wizard Merlin. While charming, this story reflects a more universal human need to explain the inexplicable, to assign a narrative to a mystery that has persisted for millennia. The true answer likely lies in a combination of these factors. For the Neolithic people of Karnak, the concepts of astronomy, religion, and social power were probably not separate categories as we understand them today, but were intertwined aspects of a single, holistic worldview. The stones were likely multifunctional, an astronomical observatory, a sacred temple, and a symbol of communal identity all at once. Their enduring power lies in this very ambiguity. Unlike a pyramid, which is clearly a tomb, or a fortress, which is clearly for defense, the Karnak alignments refuse to be easily categorized. They stand as a profound testament to the human mind's capacity for abstract thought, long-term planning, and the deep-seated desire to impose order on the natural world, to create meaning from stone and align it with the movements of the heavens. They are a reminder that some of the greatest mysteries are not hidden in lost cities or buried treasure, but are standing in plain sight, silently challenging us to understand the minds of the people who saw the universe in a row of granite stones. Imagine the dedication required to carve a cathedral not from the ground up, but directly into the heart of a mountain, using little more than a hammer, a chisel, and unwavering faith. This is the staggering reality of the Ajanta and Ellora caves in India. a complex of 34 rock-cut monasteries and temples that represent one of the most ambitious and artistically sophisticated architectural projects in human history. Created in two distinct phases, the Ajanta caves between the 2nd century BCE and the 6th century CE, and the Ellora caves primarily between the 6th and 9th centuries CE, these are not simple holes in a cliff face. They are entire subterranean worlds, meticulously excavated from the solid basalt rock of the Sahyadri Hills, featuring soaring pillars, elaborate facades, and vast, echoing prayer halls, all created by the painstaking process of removing material rather than adding it. The very concept of this reverse architecture is a marvel of planning and geological understanding. The master builders did not have the luxury of a blueprint that could be adjusted as they went. Every single element of the temple, from the grandest pillar to the most delicate ceiling relief, had to be visualized in 3 dimensions within the living rock before the first chip was struck. One mistake, a misjudgment in the thickness of a wall, an over-enthusiastic strike of the chisel, could collapse an entire chamber or ruin a sculpture that had taken years to perfect. This required an intuitive, almost supernatural knowledge of the mountain's integrity. They knew precisely how deep to carve, how much rock to leave behind for support, and how to distribute weight and stress across wide spans. The Colossal temple at Ellora is the ultimate expression of this audacious genius. It is not built, it is revealed. Imagine workers beginning at the top of the cliff and carving downward, removing an estimated 200,000 tons of rock to isolate a single, free-standing block of stone that was then, over generations, sculpted into a magnificent, multi-story temple complex complete with a gateway, pavilions, a main shrine, and a ring of monumental elephants and pillars, all intricately carved. This single project is twice the area of the Parthenon in Athens and stands 1.5 times as high, making it the largest monolithic structure on Earth, a testament to ambition that is simply without parallel. But the true soul of these caves, particularly at Ajanta, lies not just in their grand scale, but in the breathtaking artistry that adorns every surface. Stepping inside the dimly lit viharas, or monastic halls, is like entering a richly illustrated ancient manuscript. The walls and ceilings are covered in some of the finest and oldest surviving examples of Indian painting, depicting countless scenes from the Jataka tales, which are stories of the Buddha's previous lives. The artists employed a fresco technique, applying pigments to a specially prepared layer of wet plaster made from clay, cow dung, and rice husks, which allowed the colors to bond deeply with the wall. The palette was derived from nature, red and yellow ochre from minerals, lamp black from soot, vivid lapis lazuli blue imported from Afghanistan, and green from local terre verte. The figures they painted are not static icons. They are vibrant, lifelike beings rendered with a profound understanding of perspective, emotion, and movement. A princess's hand gestures with delicate grace, an elephant's skin is textured and wrinkled, a dancer's body sways with rhythmic energy. This is art that breathes, telling complex spiritual narratives with a humanity that feels instantly familiar across the centuries. This level of detail in near-total darkness presents one of the most practical and fascinating mysteries. How did they see what they were doing? The answer lies in a clever and simple manipulation of available light. The main halls were designed with large, single doorways that acted as the primary light source. To illuminate the deeper, windowless interiors, artisans employed a sophisticated system of reflectors. They would polish sheets of metal or large white cloths and position them outside to catch the intense Indian sun, then angle and reflect that light deep into the cave's recesses. For the most intricate work on the ceilings and darker corners, they used small, flickering oil lamps. The soot marks from thousands of these lamps can still be seen on the ceilings today, a silent testament to the countless hours spent by artists working in a dim, smoky glow, their world reduced to the tiny patch of rock illuminated by their unwavering flame. The entire endeavor, the geological precision, the architectural audacity, and the sublime artistry, was driven by a powerful synergy of commerce, royalty, and devotion. These caves were not built by slaves, but by skilled guilds of artists and artisans, funded by wealthy merchants and powerful kings who sought spiritual merit by patronizing these remote centers of Buddhist, Hindu, and Jain learning. They were universities, monasteries, and pilgrimage sites, where the pursuit of artistic perfection was itself considered a highest form of prayer, a way to make the divine visibly present in the world. The caves of Ajanta and Ellora stand as a permanent record of that pursuit, a symphony in stone and color that echoes with the quiet chipping of chisels and the silent concentration of artists who believed that to carve into the mountain was to carve a path to enlightenment itself. High on the arid, wind-swept Altiplano of Bolivia, at a lung-crushing altitude of over 12,000 feet, stands the haunting remnant of a culture that mastered the heavens and the earth with equal prowess. The Gate of the Sun is not merely a carved rock. It is a solitary, enigmatic page torn from a lost library of Andean knowledge, a monolithic puzzle that has resisted a century and a half of scholarly decipherment. Carved from a single, massive block of andesite around 500 CE, this towering archway weighs an estimated 10 tons and is covered in the most complex and precise iconography found in the pre-Columbian Americas. It is the ultimate symbol of the Tiwanaku civilization, a people who forged a powerful state around the shores of Lake Titicaca centuries before the Inca rose to power, and whose technological and spiritual achievements seem almost otherworldly in their sophistication. The first layer of this mystery is a logistical one, a question of sheer force and determination. The andesite stone itself is a volcanic rock notorious for its hardness and durability, a material that would quickly wear down modern steel tools. The quarries for this specific type of stone are not located conveniently nearby. They are found on the Copacabana Peninsula, a staggering 50 miles away across the choppy, cold waters of Lake Titicaca and over rugged, mountainous terrain. Moving a 10-ton block of stone across such a distance is a monumental challenge even today. The Tiwanaku people, without the wheel, without draft animals larger than the llama, and without metal tools harder than bronze, accomplished this feat with a quiet efficiency that we can only guess at. The most plausible theory involves a combination of immense manpower and brilliant watercraft. The block was likely roughly shaped at the quarry to reduce its weight, then transported on a massive reed boat, similar to the traditional Totora reed vessels still built on the lake today. Once ashore, it would have been hauled on log rollers up the steep incline to the ceremonial center by hundreds of workers pulling on ropes made from llama hide. This operation speaks to a highly organized society capable of mobilizing and coordinating labor on an industrial scale, all for a single, non-utilitarian object of profound spiritual significance. But the true, enduring mystery of the Gate of the Sun is not how they moved it, but what they carved upon it. The entire surface of the arch is dominated by a deeply incised and perfectly symmetrical central figure, often called the staff god or Viracocha, who stands rigidly frontal, holding a vertical staff in each hand. His head is surrounded by a magnificent radiating headdress composed of 24 rays, each ending in either a circle or a jaguar's head. This central deity is flanked by 48 smaller, kneeling figures, arranged in 3 rows of 8 on each side. These figures are all running toward the central god, and they are not identical. There are two distinct types, one with human heads and the other with condor heads, suggesting a symbolic representation of different realms or classes of beings. The precision of this carving is astounding. The lines are sharp, deep, and perfectly straight. The figures are uniformly spaced, and the entire composition is balanced with a master artist's eye for detail. Achieving this on a rock as hard as andesite, using only stone hammers and bronze chisels, represents a lifetime of work for a team of supremely skilled master craftsmen. It is a masterpiece of lapidary art that would be difficult to replicate even with modern pneumatic tools. This intricate carving is not mere decoration. It is a complex codex in stone, a cosmological map that many researchers believe functions as a sophisticated calendar. The central figure, with its 24 rays, is thought to be a solar deity, and the entire ensemble is precisely aligned to catch the first rays of the rising sun on the morning of the September equinox, illuminating the god's face in a dramatic display of light and shadow. The 48 running figures have been interpreted as markers for a calendar system. Some researchers, like astronomer and anthropologist Professor Giulio Magli, have proposed that the gate encodes a lunisolar calendar, a complex system that reconciles the solar year with the lunar months. The numerical values present 24, 48 are multiples of 12, a base number that appears in calendrical systems across the ancient world. Another compelling theory suggests the gate was part of a larger architectural complex that functioned as a precise astronomical observatory. The entire city of Tiwanaku is laid out on a strict east-west axis, aligned with celestial events. The gate itself may have been the centerpiece of a temple from which priests could observe the rising and setting of specific stars and planets, using the carved icons as fixed reference points to predict solstices, equinoxes, and other agriculturally vital dates. Yet, for all our theories, the full meaning of the symbols remains just out of reach. The Tiwanaku left no deciphered written records to provide a key. The gate we see today is a fragment, a solitary doorframe standing in isolation. It almost certainly was not originally freestanding. It was likely the central piece of a much larger building, perhaps a temple wall that collapsed in some long-ago catastrophe, leaving only this one incredibly durable fragment behind. This context is crucial. The gate was not meant to be viewed alone. It was the focal point of a sacred space, an integral part of rituals and ceremonies that are now lost to time. The running figures may represent deified ancestors, celestial messengers, or a procession of priests bringing offerings to the central god. The condor-headed and human-headed attendants could symbolize a union between the sky realm, represented by the condor, and the earth realm of humanity. The Gate of the Sun, therefore, is more than an artifact. It is a frozen moment of spiritual communication, a permanent prayer etched into stone. It encapsulates the Tiwanaku's profound connection to the cosmos, their mastery of their harsh environment, and their desire to create a permanent record of their belief that the rhythms of human life were inextricably tied to the majestic, predictable, yet utterly mysterious dance of the heavens. While the Tiwanaku were carving their celestial code into the sun-drenched Altiplano on the other side of the world, another civilization was mastering the very flow of water itself, turning it into an obedient servant of their expanding empire. The Roman aqueducts are so iconic that they risk feeling almost mundane to our modern eyes, but to view them as simple ancient waterways is to completely miss the revolutionary genius they represent. This was not merely a plumbing project, it was the lifeblood of an entire civilization, a networked system of engineered rivers that defied geography and gravity to bring fresh, clean water directly into the heart of cities, enabling a level of urban sanitation and public health that would not be seen again in Europe for over 1,000 years after Rome's fall. Beginning with the Aqua Apia in 312 BCE, these structures became the ultimate symbol of Roman practical ingenuity, a tangible demonstration of their power to tame nature itself for the comfort and glory of their citizens. The fundamental principle seems simple: water flows downhill, but the breathtaking complexity emerges in the execution over the vast and varied terrain of the Roman Empire. The goal was to find a pure water source, often a spring in distant mountains, and then create a channel with a constant, gentle slope that would carry that water dozens, and sometimes hundreds, of miles to its destination. The precision required for this is almost incomprehensible. Surveyors, known as agrimensors, had to map a course through forests, across valleys, and over hills, calculating a gradient that was steep enough to keep the water moving but shallow enough to prevent the channel from eroding from the force of the current. The standard slope was a mere 1 to 3 feet per mile. To achieve this, they used an arsenal of sophisticated tools that we understand in concept but struggle to replicate in practice. The chorobates, a massive 20-foot-long wooden level with water-filled grooves, provided a remarkably accurate horizontal reference. The dioptra, a precursor to the theodolite, was used for sighting angles across long distances. These tools, combined with meticulous record-keeping on inscribed stones called sipi that marked the gradient and depth at specific points, allowed them to plot a course with an accuracy that modern engineers admit is difficult to achieve even with laser levels and GPS. The true architectural magic happened when the chosen path encountered an obstacle. If a hill stood in the way, the Romans simply tunneled through it, carving out subterranean channels that sometimes stretched for miles, with vertical access shafts dug at regular intervals for maintenance and ventilation. But it was in crossing valleys that their engineering soared to its most spectacular heights. Rather than diverting the channel down one side and laboriously pumping the water up the other, they built the magnificent arcades we recognize today. These multi-tiered arches of stone or concrete were not just beautiful, they were structurally brilliant. The arch design distributed the immense weight of the water-filled channel above efficiently to the ground, allowing them to build higher and longer than any other civilization at the time. The Pont du Gard in southern France is the quintessential example. This three-tiered aqueduct bridge stretches 900 feet across the Garden River Valley, standing 160 feet high. Its builders achieved a gradient so precise that the water drops a mere 1 inch for every 300 feet of length, a feat of surveying that borders on the magical. Perhaps their most counterintuitive innovation was the inverted siphon. When faced with a particularly deep or wide valley where building an arcade would be impractical or too expensive, the Romans employed a principle that seems to defy common sense. They forced the water to go up. They would run the channel down one side of the valley into a massive, pressurized lead or stone pipeline. This pipeline would then traverse the valley floor and climb the opposite slope, where the water would miraculously flow back up into a receiving tank and continue its journey. This worked because of the unbreakable principle of hydraulics. Water in a sealed system will always seek to level itself. The tremendous pressure built up from the water's descent down the first slope provided more than enough force to push it a significant distance up the other side, as long as the outlet was lower than the inlet. These siphons had to be built to withstand immense pressure, requiring incredibly strong lead piping with walls sometimes over an inch thick, a testament to their metallurgical skills. The entire system, from mountain spring to city fountain, was a masterclass in managing water pressure, volume, and purity, incorporating settling tanks to remove sediment and mesh screens to filter debris. The legacy of the aqueducts is measured in more than just stone and water. It is measured in the quality of life they enabled. A large city like Rome, with its 1 million inhabitants, was supplied by 11 major aqueducts delivering over 1 million cubic meters of water every single day. This abundance fueled an urban lifestyle that was unprecedented. It supplied thousands of public fountains and latrines, opulent public baths that were centers of social life, and even private homes for the wealthy. It flushed out sewers like the mighty Cloaca Maxima, keeping cities cleaner and healthier than any until the modern era. The sheer durability of these structures is a final, humbling testament to their skill. While our modern infrastructure requires constant repair and replacement, many Roman aqueducts functioned for centuries, and some, like the Aqua Virgo in Rome, still supply water to the city's fountains today. They stand not as ruins, but as functioning monuments to a civilization that viewed engineering not as a mere tool for conquest, but as a sacred duty to improve the human condition, proving that true greatness is found not just in the power to conquer, but in the wisdom to provide. Emerging from the humid jungles of Cambodia, the Angkor Wat temple complex is not merely a building. It is a breathtakingly ambitious act of world building, a terrestrial model of the Hindu cosmos constructed on a scale that challenges our very understanding of human potential. Conceived in the early 12th century by King Sacsayhuamán II, this was not just a place of worship but a funerary temple intended to immortalize the god-king's legacy and serve as his gateway to the divine. The statistics alone are enough to induce awe. The entire complex sprawls across 400 acres, an area larger than modern-day Vatican City, and is surrounded by a vast moat over 600 feet wide, a symbolic representation of the cosmic ocean that encircles the world in Hindu mythology. Crossing this moat and approaching the temple's main entrance, one is confronted with a man-made mountain of stone, its 5 iconic lotus bud towers designed to mimic the 5 peaks of the sacred Mount Meru, the center of the universe in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. This was architecture as theological statement, a staggering feat of engineering designed to replicate heaven on earth. The construction process itself is a multi-layered mystery, beginning with the sheer volume of material. Primary building stone was sandstone, quarried from the holy mountain of Phnom Kulen, located over 25 miles to the northeast. Historians estimate that the temple required between 5 and 10 million individual sandstone blocks, each weighing an average of 1.5 tons. The logistics of this supply chain in the 12th century are almost unimaginable. The prevailing theory suggests a clever combination of land and water routes. Blocks were likely transported on wooden carts pulled by elephants along a specially constructed road, but the final and most efficient leg of the journey would have been by canal. Researchers believe the Khmer engineers built a sophisticated network of canals that connected the quarry directly to the temple site, allowing the massive stones to be floated on barges during the rainy season, a method that would have conserved an immense amount of human and animal labor. Upon arrival, the real magic began, the assembly. Unlike the Romans who used mortar or the Egyptians who relied on sheer mass, the Khmer builders employed a technique of perfect ashlar masonry. Each block was precisely dressed and carved on the ground before being fitted against its neighbor with such incredible accuracy that the joints are virtually invisible. This interlocking precision, achieved with nothing more than metal chisels and stone hammers, has allowed the structure to withstand centuries of monsoon rains and even seismic activity, its own perfect geometry providing its stability. Beyond the physical construction lies an even more profound layer of genius, the temple's celestial alignment. Angkor Wat is precisely oriented towards the west, a direction typically associated with Vishnu, the deity to whom the temple was dedicated, but also a highly unusual orientation for a primary temple. This westward focus was not arbitrary, it was a deliberate astronomical choice, On the morning of the spring equinox, an observer standing at the western entrance gate would witness a spectacular phenomenon. The sun rises directly over the central lotus tower, perfectly aligning with the heart of this cosmic model. This alignment is far too precise to be coincidental, indicating the Khmer possessed an advanced understanding of solar cycles and were able to incorporate this knowledge into the very foundation of their grandest project. The temple's extensive bas-relief galleries further this connection. The famous Churning of the Ocean of Milk gallery is not just a mythological scene. It is a complex allegory for the precession of the equinoxes and the balancing of cosmic forces, suggesting the entire complex functioned as both a temple and a gigantic astronomical observatory. Managing a project of this colossal scale in the challenging environment of a tropical monsoon climate required a level of social organization that rivaled the architectural achievement. The workforce would have been comprised of tens of thousands of people, highly skilled artisans, masons, sculptors, and architects, but also a massive support system of laborers, cooks, and coordinators. This was all made possible by the Khmer Empire's incredibly sophisticated hydraulic engineering. The region around Angkor was not a pristine jungle, but a meticulously managed landscape of reservoirs, called barrays, and canals that ensured a stable, year-round water supply for drinking and agriculture. This system allowed the empire to support a large, non-agricultural population of workers and prevented the project from being halted by seasonal droughts. The temple was not an isolated shrine, but the vibrant, beating heart of a vast, managed metropolis. The true genius of Angkor Wat, therefore, lies in this holistic synthesis. It was the product of a civilization that had mastered not only stone and sky, but also water and society, weaving them all together to create a monument that stands as one of humanity's most sublime and enduring attempts to reach for the heavens and capture their order here on Earth. Deep in the steamy lowlands of the Mexican Gulf Coast, a civilization now known as the Olmec laid the foundation for all subsequent cultures in Mesoamerica, and their most enduring and enigmatic legacy is a collection of 17 monumental stone heads that seem to silently judge the passage of time itself. These are not mere sculptures, they are portraits in basalt, each one a unique individual with a distinct personality, from stern and imposing rulers to figures with a faint, knowing smile. Carved from a single, massive block of stone between 1500 and 400 BCE, these colossal heads represent a logistical and artistic puzzle that pushes our understanding of this mother culture to its limits. The sheer scale is the first hurdle to comprehension. The largest of these heads, found at the site of Kobata, weighs a staggering 50 tons and stands over 10 feet tall. To put that into perspective, that is the weight of a fully loaded semi-truck, sculpted into a perfectly recognizable human visage using nothing more than stone tools. The mystery begins at the source. The basalt used for these monoliths did not originate where they were found. The Olmec heartland is a swampy, alluvial plain, rich in clay and water, but utterly devoid of the volcanic stone needed for such projects. The nearest source for this specific type of basalt is the Tuxtla Mountains, a rugged range located over 50 miles away from the major Olmec centers like San Lorenzo and La Venta. Imagine the challenge, moving a 50-ton block of solid rock across 50 miles of treacherous terrain that included rivers, swamps, and dense jungle, all without the wheel, without pack animals larger than dogs, and without metal tools to fashion advanced machinery. The most widely accepted theory involves an incredible feat of coordinated labor. The Olmec likely used a combination of rollers made from hard palm wood and sturdy ropes crafted from plant fibers. They may have constructed large reed rafts to float the stones down rivers during the rainy season, a technique that would have significantly reduced the overland distance they needed to cover by brute force. This endeavor would have required the mobilization of hundreds, if not thousands, of workers, all directed by a powerful, centralized authority with the organizational capacity to plan the route, feed the laborers, and maintain morale for a project that could have taken months for a single head. This level of social complexity, where a significant portion of society is diverted from food production for such a symbolic task, is a clear hallmark of a sophisticated and highly stratified civilization, one that was far more advanced than previously imagined for this era. The artistic skill on display is no less baffling than the logistics. Basalt is an incredibly hard, dense stone, scoring a 7 on the Mohs hardness scale, just below diamonds. The Olmec artisans had only harder stones like jadate and obsidian to work with, using stone hammers for the rough shaping and delicate obsidian flakes for the fine detail. They somehow managed to capture astonishingly lifelike features. Each head wears a distinctive helmet, often adorned with intricate symbols or emblems that might represent a player in the Mesoamerican ballgame or signify military rank. The faces themselves are remarkably individualistic, with broad, flat noses, full lips, and almond-shaped eyes that possess a startling depth and presence. The subtle variations in expression, a slight frown here, a relaxed gaze there, suggest these were portraits of actual, powerful rulers, perhaps carved to commemorate their reign or deify them after death. The precision required to achieve this level of realism with such primitive tools is a testament to generations of accumulated artistic knowledge and a cultural value placed on portraiture that would echo through the Maya and Aztec civilizations centuries later. Yet, for all we can deduce about their creation, the ultimate purpose of these heads remains one of archaeology's most tantalizing debates. Why go to such monumental effort? The prevailing theory is that they served as powerful symbols of political and religious authority, permanent monuments to specific rulers designed to awe the population and legitimize a dynasty's right to rule. Their placement at the ceremonial centers of Olmec cities supports this, as they would have been constant, imposing reminders of the power structure. However, some researchers propose a more dynamic function. The helmets have led to speculation that they could represent deified ball players, heroes of the sacred and often deadly Mesoamerican ballgame. Another theory suggests they might not be portraits of living kings, but of defeated and sacrificed enemies, their colossal heads serving as grim trophies and warnings. The truth is likely a complex fusion of these ideas, rooted in a worldview where ruler, deity, and the cosmic order were intimately intertwined. The Olmec colossal heads are thus far more than just art. They are the carved embodiment of a civilization's soul, its power, its artistry, and its enduring mystery, silently challenging us to understand the world of the people who first dreamed of carving mountains into men. Rising from the sun-baked soil of the Peloponnese, the citadel of Mycenae stands as a formidable testament to a legendary age of heroes and warrior kings, and its primary entrance, the iconic Lion Gate, serves as a stone manifesto of their power and sophisticated artistry. Dating to around 1250 BCE, this is not merely a functional gateway. It is Europe's oldest monumental sculpture, a heraldic device carved in limestone that announces the might of the House of Atreus to all who approach. The gate's imposing structure is a masterpiece of what is known as Cyclopean masonry, named by later Greeks who believed only the mythical one-eyed giants could have moved such enormous, irregular boulders. The lintel alone, the massive horizontal beam spanning the gateway, is a single block of stone estimated to weigh well over 20 tons. The precision with which this megalith was lifted and positioned atop the two towering jambs is a feat that required not just brute strength, but a profound understanding of leverage, balance, and engineering physics. The true marvel, however, rests upon this gigantic lintel. Here, the Mycenaean stonemasons carved a relieving triangle, a clever architectural feature designed to divert the immense weight of the masonry above away from the lintel itself to prevent it from snapping under the pressure. Within this triangle, they placed their most enduring symbol, a magnificent relief sculpture of two powerful lionesses, their forepaws resting gracefully on the altar-like base of a single, tapering Minoan-style column. The lionesses' heads, which would have been turned to stare directly at the visitor, were originally carved from a separate material, likely steatite or bronze, and attached with dowels, making their gaze even more lifelike and intimidating. This triad of figures is a composition bursting with symbolic meaning. The column represents the palace and the divine authority of the king, the wanaks, while the fierce lionesses, creatures not native to Greece and thus symbolic of exotic power and untamed nature, act as its eternal guardians. It is a bold statement. To enter this city, one must pass under the watchful eyes of the king's power, a power so absolute it can command even the most majestic and wild beasts to stand sentinel. The methods used to create this sculptural marvel are a subject of intense debate among archaeologists. The Mycenaeans were a Bronze Age culture, meaning their hardest metal tools were made of bronze, an alloy too soft to effectively work hard limestone with the kind of precision we see on the gate. How then did they achieve such clean, deep cuts and smooth surfaces? The answer likely lies in a combination of technique and abrasive materials. Stonemasons probably used bronze chisels and drills, but they would have employed a constant stream of an abrasive slurry, likely a mixture of water and sand, to do the actual cutting. The quartz particles in the sand, which are harder than limestone, would have been the real cutting agent, with the bronze tools serving primarily to apply pressure and guide the abrasive action. This was a slow, painstaking process, one that would have required immense patience and skill. The carving was almost certainly done after the lintel was already in place, high above the ground, adding another layer of danger and difficulty to the endeavor. The final polish would have been achieved with ever finer abrasives, perhaps even leather pads, to achieve the smooth finish that has, against all odds, survived for over 3 millennia. The Lion Gate's legacy is as profound as its construction. It is the sole surviving piece of major Mycenaean sculpture, a precious window into their iconography and belief system. It stands at the chronological and cultural crossroads of the Aegean, displaying a clear influence from Minoan Crete in the form of the column, and perhaps even from Hittite and Egyptian art in the concept of guardian beasts flanking a gateway. Yet it is unmistakably Mycenaean in its stark, powerful, and martial tone. This gate was the entrance to a city celebrated in Homer's epics, the home of the legendary King Agamemnon, who led the Greek forces to Troy. While the historicity of these tales is debated, the gate itself is irrefutable proof of a powerful, centralized, and wealthy state capable of organizing large-scale construction projects and employing master artisans. It symbolizes the shift in power from Minoan palaces to Mycenaean fortresses, from a maritime thalassocracy to a mainland-based militaristic culture of warrior elites. More than just an architectural feature, the Lion Gate is the very embodiment of Mycenaean identity, a statement of strength, sophistication, and divine right carved in stone for the ages, forever guarding the threshold between the world of myth and the undeniable reality of their monumental achievement. Just a short distance from the intricate walls of Sacsayhuamán that guard the city of Cusco, another Inca masterpiece commands the high ground, a fortress whose very name evokes a sense of awe and might. Sacsayhuamán, often translated as satisfied falcon, is a colossal complex of zigzagging ramparts that sprawls across a hill overlooking the ancient Inca capital. While its sister site showcased the Incas' domestic precision, Sacsayhuamán is a statement of sheer, unadulterated power, a defensive bulwark constructed from stones so immense that their very presence on this mountain ridge seems to defy the laws of physics. Built in the 15th century under the reign of Pachacuti, this was not merely a wall. It was the teeth of the empire, a symbol of military might and spiritual authority carved directly into the bones of the Andes. The scale of the masonry here pushes the boundaries of plausibility. The fortress is famed for its 3 massive, parallel terraced walls built in a zigzag pattern, stretching over 1,800 feet. These are not simple rows of bricks, they are assembled from gargantuan blocks of limestone, each one a unique, irregular polygon weighing dozens, and in some cases hundreds of tons. The largest single stone is a behemoth estimated to weigh 360 tons, a weight comparable to 500 modern cars. The quarry for this limestone was located over 2 miles away, and the path to the fortress involves a steep ascent of over 900 feet. The logistical nightmare of moving these megaliths is almost incomprehensible. Without wheels, without iron tools, and without draft animals stronger than the llama, the Inca achieved this through a breathtaking mobilization of human labor and a genius for simple mechanics. The prevailing theory involves an army of workers using ropes, levers, and log rollers, inching each stone along a carefully prepared causeway. For the most massive blocks, they may have built temporary earthen ramps, dragging the stones up these slopes with a coordinated effort that must have been a spectacle of shouting, straining, and rhythmic motion, all conducted in the thin, oxygen-poor air at an altitude of over 12,000 feet. The effort expended on moving just one of these giants would have been a monumental project for a modern crew. The fact that the Inca did this repeatedly for an entire fortress is a testament to the power of the Mita labor system and the sheer will of the imperial state. Yet, the movement of the stones is only half the story. The fitting of these blocks is what truly separates Sacsayhuamán from any other fortress on Earth. Like at Sacsayhuamán, the stones are fitted together with a jigsaw puzzle precision that eliminates the need for mortar. The joints are so tight that even after centuries of earthquakes and weathering, one cannot force a razor blade between them. This perfection was achieved through a patient, iterative process. Stonemasons would use harder stones to pound and abrade the limestone, slowly shaping each block. The dominant theory suggests they used a technique of trial and error, lowering a stone into place, identifying high spots through pigment markings, and then painstakingly grinding those spots down before lifting and trying again. This process, repeated for thousands of stones, speaks to an investment of time and patience that is almost alien to our modern mindset of efficiency. It also hints at a profound cultural philosophy. The Inca believed stones had a life force, a kame, and that master masons could literally persuade the rocks to fit together. In a very real sense, they weren't forcing the stone into submission. They were working with its essence, understanding its grain and structure to find its perfect match in the wall. This was architecture as a form of diplomacy with the natural world. The zigzag design of the walls is a final stroke of multifaceted genius. From a purely military perspective, the sawtooth pattern was a formidable defensive feature. It eliminated any blind spots for the defenders, allowing them to rain down projectiles, slingshots, arrows, and boulders on attackers from multiple angles simultaneously. Any force attempting to scale one wall would find themselves exposed to enfilading fire from the adjacent sections, but the design likely held a deeper, spiritual significance as well. The zigzag pattern is a recurring motif in Andean cosmology, often representing lightning, a powerful force associated with the weather god Illapa. It also evokes the shape of a lightning bolt, a symbol of divine power and energy. By crafting the fortress in this sacred form, the Inca were not just building a defensive structure, they were invoking the power of the gods themselves, weaving a protective spiritual barrier into the very fabric of their strongest earthly fortress. Sacsayhuamán, therefore, stands as the ultimate expression of the Inca worldview, a seamless fusion of brute strength, meticulous engineering, and sacred symbolism, a place where the immense power of the state was quite literally set in stone, not as a static monument, but as a living, breathing entity in dialogue with both the mountain it crowns and the heavens it mirrors. Nestled on the small, sun-drenched islands of Malta and Gozo, a cluster of stone structures stands as a silent, profound challenge to everything we assume about the dawn of civilization. The Maltese Temples, with the majestic Arkaim and Mnajdra complexes as their crown jewels, are not just old, they are ancients among ancients, predating Stonehenge by over 1,000 years and the Great Pyramid of Giza by a full millennium. Erected during a remarkable burst of creativity between 3,600 and 2,500 BCE, these are the oldest freestanding stone structures on Earth, a title that alone should command our awe. But their true mystery lies not just in their age, but in the sheer sophistication of their design and the profound puzzle of their purpose, all achieved by a seemingly isolated island culture with nothing but stone tools and a shared, powerful vision. The construction process itself is a marvel of Neolithic engineering. The primary building material was the Globigerina limestone that forms the very bedrock of the islands, a stone soft enough to be quarried with stone picks and antler tools but durable enough to have survived for over 5,000 years. The scale of the undertaking is immediately apparent. At Arkaim, the largest megalith is a monster weighing over 20 tons, moving these colossal blocks without the wheel, without metal, and without any evidence of a large, domesticated animal workforce required a level of communal organization that is staggering to contemplate. The most plausible theory involves a system of log rollers, levers, and ropes made from plant fibers, with hundreds of people pulling in unison to inch each massive stone from the quarry to the sacred site. This was more than just hard labor. It was a coordinated ballet of human effort, a project that would have required a sophisticated social hierarchy with planners, overseers, and a vast, willing labor force all working toward a common spiritual goal. The temples are not haphazard piles of rock. They are complex structures based on a cloverleaf design, a series of semicircular chambers, or apses, branching off from a central corridor. The builders employed advanced architectural techniques, corbelling the walls inward to create vaulted ceilings, and using strategically placed stone slabs to support the immense weight of the structures above. The precision with which these multi-ton stones were shaped and fitted together reveals a masterful understanding of stoneworking, a skill honed over generations into a sacred art form. This architectural genius extends beyond mere structure into the realm of the celestial. The southern temple at Mnajdra is perhaps the most exquisite example of this, a Stone Age observatory of breathtaking accuracy. Its main axis is precisely aligned with the rising sun during the equinoxes. On the morning of the spring and autumn equinox, the first rays of the sun slice perfectly through the main doorway, illuminating a specific stone slab in the inner apse. But the alignments become even more precise. A smaller porthole-like opening in one of the apses is aligned so that on the summer solstice, the sun's rays form a perfect rectangle of light on a large stone slab inside. During the winter solstice, the light projects a distinct dagger-like shape onto another massive stone. These are not rough approximations. They are precise, repeatable astronomical events engineered into the very fabric of the building. This demonstrates that the temple builders possessed a deep, empirical knowledge of the solar cycle, meticulously observing the sun's shifting path over many years and then encoding that knowledge into immovable stone. This transforms the temple from a simple place of worship into a sophisticated calendar, a mechanism for marking the changing seasons, predicting the solstices, and likely regulating the agricultural and ritual cycles of their society. The interior of the temples adds another layer of profound mystery, one carved in stone. The walls are adorned with intricate spirals, patterns of drilled holes, and detailed bas-reliefs of animals. But the most captivating and enigmatic features are the so-called fat lady statues. These are corpulent, seated female figures discovered in fragments within the temples, with the most famous example being the exquisite sleeping lady found in the Hypogeum. Their exaggerated forms have led most archaeologists to interpret them as representations of a mother goddess or a deity of fertility, abundance, and perhaps the cycle of life and death. This suggests the temples were the heart of a complex, goddess-centered religion, a place where rituals to ensure fertile land, healthy flocks, and the continuation of the community were performed. The discovery of altars with serrated edges that may have been used for bloodless libations, along with animal bones and ceremonial knives, supports this theory of a vibrant ritual life. Yet, the ultimate purpose of these spaces remains tantalizingly just out of reach. Were they solely religious centers, or did they also serve as community gathering halls, storage facilities for communal grain, or even as astronomical schools for a priestly class? The complete absence of any fortifications or defensive structures suggests this was a peaceful, cooperative society, one that channeled its collective energy not into warfare, but into the construction of these monumental sanctuaries. The greatest enigma of the Maltese temples is their end. After more than 1,000 years of continuous use and development, this vibrant temple-building culture suddenly and completely vanished around 2500 BCE. The temples fell into disuse and were slowly buried by soil and debris, their memory lost until their rediscovery in the modern era. There is no evidence of invasion, mass violence, or a catastrophic natural disaster. The leading theory points to an ecological collapse, perhaps through deforestation and soil erosion caused by the intensive agriculture needed to support the large population required to build the temples. This would have led to famine, social fragmentation, and the eventual abandonment of their complex beliefs and practices. The Maltese temples stand as a powerful and haunting monument to human ingenuity and spiritual yearning. They are a testament to what small, isolated communities can achieve through cooperation and a shared vision. But they also serve as a poignant reminder of the fragility of even the most sophisticated cultures, leaving behind a legacy of stone and silence that challenges us to understand the minds of the people who first dared to build for the gods. Deep in the heart of Zhejiang province in China, far from the famous Terracotta Army and the Great Wall, lies an underground mystery that defies both explanation and imagination. In 1992, a curious farmer named Wu An decided to pump the water out of a small, local pond in his village, a pond that local law had always claimed was bottomless. What he revealed as the water level dropped was not mud or bedrock, but the top of a massive hand-carved archway leading into a vast, dark void. This was the first glimpse of what would become known as the Longyu Caves, an astonishing complex of 24 subterranean halls carved by human hands, but for which those hands left absolutely no record of their purpose, their methods, or even their existence. The sheer scale of the excavation is the first fact that numbs the mind. The total explored area covers over 3 million square feet, a subterranean space so vast it could comfortably contain several football fields. Each of the 24 grottos is monumental in its own right, with the largest soaring to a height of nearly 100 feet and spanning an area of over 12,000 square meters. To put that into perspective, the volume of rock removed to create this hidden empire is estimated to be almost 2 million cubic meters. If that rock were to be dumped into standard dump trucks, it would form a line stretching from New York City to Boston. This was not a small mining operation or a series of simple caves. This was the creation of an entire underground cathedral complex, a project that would have required the removal of a small mountain, all accomplished over 2,000 years ago, around 200 BCE, during a period that aligns with the Qin and Han dynasties. But the truly baffling aspect is not the amount of rock removed, but the manner in which it was done. The walls, ceilings, and supporting pillars of every single cave are covered in a consistent, mesmerizing pattern of parallel chisel marks. These are not rough, haphazard gouges. They are precise, uniform lines, all angled at a consistent 60 degrees, sweeping across the stone in elegant, rhythmic arcs. This pattern covers every single surface, from the floor to the highest point of the ceiling, indicating an almost obsessive dedication to aesthetics and a standardized technique used by all the workers. The effect is stunningly beautiful, transforming the caves into a monumental art installation, but it also serves a deeply practical mystery. This specific chiseling technique would have been incredibly time-consuming and labor-intensive. Why go to such extraordinary effort to decorate every inch of a space that, as far as we know, was intended to be hidden from view and completely sealed off? The precision extends to the architecture itself. The walls are perfectly flat, meeting the ceilings at exact 90-degree angles. The pillars are evenly distributed throughout the chambers to support the tremendous weight of the mountain above, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of structural engineering and load distribution that would prevent collapse for millennia. This leads to the two great, haunting questions that have surrounded the caves since their discovery. How did they do it? And more importantly, why? The how is a puzzle of logistics and tools. The excavation was done in sandstone, a relatively soft rock, but the sheer volume is the challenge. With simple iron chisels and hammers, the work would have been agonizingly slow. The official estimate suggests that 1,000 people working around the clock would have needed 24 years to complete just one of the larger caves, and that doesn't account for the even more time-consuming process of creating the ubiquitous chisel marks. Where is the rubble? The 2 million cubic meters of excavated rock would have created a small mountain of its own on the surface, yet there is no evidence of such a spoil heap anywhere in the surrounding area. Some theorists suggest the stone could have been used for construction projects elsewhere, but no buildings from that era in the region match the unique quality and quantity of this material. The why is an even deeper enigma. There are no historical records, no scrolls, no folk tales, not even a single character of inscription anywhere in the caves to hint at their purpose. They were completely unknown until that fateful day in 1992. They show no signs of habitation, no soot from fires, no carvings of deities, no burial niches. They were not mines, as the sandstone has no economic value. They were not tombs, as no artifacts or remains have been found. The most compelling theories range from the practical to the sublime. Some archaeologists propose they were a secret quarry for a massive, never-completed royal building project that was abandoned and forgotten. Others suggest they were a hidden imperial retreat or a sacred space for elaborate rituals that required total isolation and darkness. The perfect acoustics of the rooms have led to theories about sound-based rituals or meditation. The complete absence of any explanation forces us to confront a humbling possibility that a project of truly epic proportions, one that would have been a defining achievement for any culture, could be so completely erased from history, leaving behind only a silent, stunning, and utterly mysterious void in the earth, a permanent question mark carved in stone. While the Romans were channeling rivers of water across continents, and the Inca were persuading mountains to become fortresses, the ancient Maya of Central America were engaged in a different kind of battle, a silent, relentless struggle against the seasons themselves. In the heart of what is now Guatemala, the great city of Tikal rose like a stone island in a sea of emerald jungle, a metropolis that at its peak was home to an estimated 100,000 people. This population density rivals that of many modern cities, and it presents a paradox that has puzzled archaeologists for decades. How did a civilization without wheeled carts or metal tools support such a massive urban center in an environment defined by its unpredictability? The region experiences a dramatic 5-month dry season where rainfall is virtually non-existent, followed by a torrential wet season that can dump overwhelming amounts of water in a short time. The answer to this puzzle lies not in the towering pyramids that scrape the sky, but in what the Maya built beneath their feet, a vast, intricate, and brilliantly engineered network of reservoirs that transformed Tikal from a vulnerable settlement into a resilient, self-sustaining hydraulic empire. The sheer scale of this underground infrastructure is the first clue to its sophistication. The Maya did not simply dig holes to collect rainwater, they sculpted their entire urban landscape into a massive water catchment system. The central plaza of Tikal itself was ingeniously designed to function as a giant paved funnel. The steeply sloped surfaces of the temples, palaces, and plazas were paved with limestone plaster that was meticulously maintained to be impermeable. When the rains came, instead of allowing the precious water to run off into the jungle or soak into the ground, the entire city center became a collection device. A network of carefully graded channels and drains carved into the pavement captured this runoff and directed it into a series of massive, interconnected reservoirs strategically located around the city. The largest of these, the Temple Reservoir, had a capacity of over 20 million gallons, enough to provide drinking water for thousands of people through the long, rainless months. This was urban planning on a hydrological scale, where every building, every courtyard, and every walkway was part of a deliberate strategy to harvest and conserve every single drop of water from the heavens. But collecting vast quantities of water is only half the challenge. The other, more critical half is keeping it potable. Stagnant water in a tropical climate quickly becomes a breeding ground for algae, bacteria, and waterborne parasites, leading to disease and epidemic. This is where Maya engineering transcends simple storage and enters the realm of advanced environmental science. The true genius of the Tikal system was its multi-layered approach to purification. The reservoirs were not stagnant ponds, they were designed as dynamic, flowing systems. The Maya constructed elaborate weirs and diversion channels to manage the flow of water between reservoirs, allowing them to separate the initial, debris-filled, first flush of a storm from the cleaner water that followed. They also pioneered the use of zeolite sand filters, a technology so effective it is still used in modern water purification. Recent archaeological work led by scientists like Dr. David Lentz has discovered that the Maya lined the bottoms of their reservoirs with layers of this specific type of volcanic sand. Zeolite is a crystalline mineral with a natural negative charge and a porous structure that acts as a molecular sieve, trapping harmful bacteria, capturing dissolved nitrogen from organic waste, and binding heavy metals. This is not a primitive guess. It is our application of sophisticated mineralogy that would not be rediscovered and patented for water filtration in the modern world until the 19th century. The system's ingenuity extended beyond the reservoirs themselves and into the very fabric of the surrounding landscape. The Maya practiced a form of watershed management that modern ecologists would applaud. They maintained protected forest zones around the reservoir inlets. These forests acted as natural filters, slowing down runoff, allowing sediment to settle out before the water entered the storage tanks, and preventing the erosion that would have otherwise silted up the reservoirs. Furthermore, the water itself was likely part of a living ecosystem. Evidence suggests the Maya may have intentionally cultivated water lilies and other aquatic plants in the reservoirs. These plants are not just aesthetic, they oxygenate the water, suppress algae growth by blocking sunlight, and their root systems provide a habitat for beneficial microbes that help break down organic pollutants. This combination of engineered and natural filtration created a multi-barrier defense against contamination, ensuring a supply of clean water that could sustain a large population without causing widespread illness. The Tikal reservoirs were not just static tanks, they were managed living ecosystems, a testament to the Mayas' profound understanding of the delicate balance between their urban needs and the natural environment. This hydraulic mastery was the silent engine of their civilization, allowing their society to flourish for centuries in a challenging landscape by demonstrating that true power lies not in conquering nature, but in learning to work with its deepest rhythms. Deep within the crypts of the ancient Egyptian temple of Hathor at Dendera, a series of enigmatic stone carvings have ignited one of the most passionate and enduring debates in the world of alternative history. These bas-reliefs, dating to around 50 BCE during the Ptolemaic period, depict a scene that, to a modern eye, looks startlingly familiar. They show a large, oviform object reminiscent of a giant glass light bulb with a snake-like filament winding through its center. This bulb is held aloft on a supporting pillar that looks like an insulated cable, and it is connected to a box that could be interpreted as a battery or power source. A figure stands beside it, seemingly holding the pillar steady, while a two-armed jed pillar, a symbol of stability, acts as a stand. To those who see it through a 21st century lens, the interpretation seems obvious. This is a depiction of an ancient electric light bulb, a piece of advanced technology that has no business appearing in a 2,000-year-old temple. This is the heart of the Dendera light bulb theory, a captivating idea that challenges the conventional narrative of technological progress and invites us to consider the possibility of lost wisdom. The theory, popularized by authors like Erich von Däniken, presents a seemingly straightforward case. They argue that the Egyptians, or perhaps a much older, forgotten civilization, possessed knowledge of electricity and used it to illuminate the dark, windowless interiors of tombs and temples, explaining the absence of soot marks from torches or oil lamps in many deep subterranean chambers. Proponents point to the Baghdad battery, a clay jar from Mesopotamia containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod that could potentially generate a small electric charge, as possible evidence that such ancient technology existed. They see the Dendera relief not as a myth, but as a technical diagram, an instruction manual carved in stone to preserve this sacred knowledge for future generations. In this view, the snake represents the glowing filament, the bulb is a protective glass enclosure, the pillar is an insulated wire, and the box is a primitive battery. The entire scene, they argue, is a literal representation of a working device, a piece of anachronistic technology that proves our history books are fundamentally wrong. However, mainstream Egyptologists and historians of science offer a dramatically different, and far more contextually grounded interpretation. They argue that to understand the relief, one must view it not through the lens of modern technology, but through the rich and complex symbolism of ancient Egyptian religion. The temple at Dendera was dedicated to Hathor, the goddess of the sky, love, and beauty, and the crypt where these carvings are found was a deeply sacred space associated with the annual rebirth of the solar god, Horus. In this context, the so-called light bulb is not a technological device at all, but a highly symbolic representation of a foundational Egyptian creation myth. The oviform object is widely accepted as a lotus flower from which the sun god was believed to have emerged at the dawn of time. The snake is not a filament, but a representation of the god Harsomptus, a form of Horus, and it symbolizes the divine life force and energy emanating from the flower. The pillar it rests on is not a wire, but a symbolic jed pillar or a papyrus column, representing stability and growth. The entire scene is a cosmological map, illustrating the moment of creation itself, with the snake deity being born from the lotus and bringing light and life into the universe. This mythological reading is supported by the presence of other, unmistakably symbolic figures in the same panel, including the god Her, who represents infinity, and baboons holding up knives to ward off evil spirits. Furthermore, the technology required to create a functional incandescent light bulb, namely a vacuum-sealed glass enclosure and a reliable source of high-voltage electricity, is far beyond what any evidence suggests the ancient Egyptians possessed. The Baghdad battery, even if it was an electrochemical cell, produces a minuscule current completely insufficient to power a light. The Dendera relief, therefore, stands as a perfect case study in the power of pareidolia, the human tendency to see familiar patterns like a light bulb in ambiguous stimuli. It demonstrates how easily we can project our modern world onto the past, misinterpreting sophisticated spiritual iconography as literal blueprints for machines. Yet, the very existence of this debate is what gives the Dendera carving its enduring fascination. It forces us to confront the limits of our own understanding and to appreciate the profound difference between a symbolic language designed to explain the cosmos and a technical language designed to build a machine. The temple walls at Dendera do not hold the secret to ancient electricity, but they do hold a powerful secret about the human mind, our endless capacity for wonder and our deep desire to find our own reflection, even in the art of a civilization separated from us by millennia. If the Gate of the Sun is a single, enigmatic page from a lost library of Andean knowledge, then the nearby site of Puma Punku is the entire library collapsed into a chaotic, mind-shattering heap of rubble. This is not a building that has fallen down. It is a precision-engineered puzzle that has been explosively taken apart, a collection of stone blocks so precisely fashioned that they look less like ancient masonry and more like the components of a colossal, otherworldly machine. Part of the Greater Tiwanaku complex in Bolivia and dating to around 500 CE, Puma Punku, which means door of the puma, pushes the mystery of Andean stonework into a realm that challenges not just our understanding of history, but the very limits of plausibility. The first thing that strikes you is the surreal geometry of the pieces. Scattered across the landscape are H-blocks, I-blocks, and blocks with perfectly spaced, shallow drill holes that look like they were made for mounting something. But the most astonishing features are the complex, interlocking channels and notches cut into the hard andesite and red sandstone. These are not simple grooves. They are precise, repeating geometric patterns with sharp, clean internal corners and consistent depths. Many of these channels are T-shaped or form perfect double outlines, and they were clearly designed to accept metal clamps known as I-cramps that would have held the massive stones together. Archaeologists have found examples of these clamps, which were made from a unique copper-arsenic-nickel-bronze alloy, poured into the pre-cut slots to create a permanent, ultra-strong bond. This is a level of joinery and anti-seismic engineering that feels centuries ahead of its time, a system designed for reassembly, as if the builders anticipated that their creation might one day be shaken apart and need to be put back together. The true heart of the mystery, however, lies in the quality of the stonework itself. The andesite used here is an igneous rock with a Mohs hardness rating of 7, just one step below diamond and far harder than the granite the Egyptians worked with. To shape this material with such perfection, the Tiwanaku stonemasons would have needed tools made of something even harder, like diamond-tipped drills or saws. The flatness of the stone surfaces is perhaps the most baffling characteristic. Many of the larger slabs possess a flatness that is comparable to modern machine-lapped surfaces, with a degree of precision measured in fractions of a millimeter. How is this possible? The conventional explanation of patiently pecking away at the stone with harder rocks and using sand as an abrasive seems almost laughably inadequate when confronted with these artifacts. The abrasive method could account for the smoothness, but it struggles to explain the perfectly sharp 90-degree internal corners found in the complex channels. Sand abrasion naturally creates rounded grooves, not the razor-sharp, clean angles that are everywhere at Pumapunku. This has led to a wide range of theories that venture far outside mainstream archaeology. The most compelling alternative explanation involves the use of advanced sawing technology. Could the Tiwanaku have possessed some form of lost machining technology? The evidence on the stones is suggestive. Some blocks show cut marks that appear to be from a saw blade that left a consistent, straight kerf mark, and there are curious, shallow drill holes that look like they were made by a core drill, a tool that removes a cylinder of material. The presence of these features has fueled speculation about the use of diamond-tipped tools or even more exotic methods. Geologist Dr. David Hatcher Childress has famously pointed out that the precision and the types of cuts resemble those made by modern computer-controlled machinery, leading to the provocative question of whether an advanced, unknown culture with such technology could have existed in the distant past. While the mainstream archaeological view rightly demands verifiable evidence and cautions against underestimating the skill and patience of ancient artisans, the physical evidence at Pumapunku remains stubbornly anomalous. It represents the absolute pinnacle of pre-Columbian stoneworking, a level of precision that is not found anywhere else in the Americas. The site does not fit neatly into our linear narrative of technological progress. It stands as a stark outlier, a collection of stones that seem to whisper of a different path, a different school of knowledge that was either lost to time or so specialized that it died with its masters. Whether the product of unimaginable patience with simple tools or a glimpse of a forgotten technological peak, Pumapunku's true power lies in its ability to dismantle our assumptions, leaving us with a field of stone puzzles that continue to defy any easy explanation. Descending into the cool, cerulean depths off the westernmost tip of Japan, we encounter a mystery that lies not on solid ground, but beneath the waves, a sight that forces us to confront one of the most fundamental questions in archaeology. Where do we draw the line between the handiwork of nature and the signature of humankind? This is the Yonaguni Monument, a sprawling, enigmatic structure discovered in 1985 by local divers, its massive sandstone forms resting silently on the seafloor. What makes this site so profoundly controversial is its age and location. If these formations are indeed artificial, they were likely carved when this area was above water, possibly around 8000 BCE. A date that would place its construction at the very end of the last ice age, a time when mainstream history tells us humans were simple hunter-gatherers, incapable of the sophisticated seafaring and stoneworking such a project would demand. The visual evidence is immediately striking and deeply compelling. The monument's most famous feature is a massive, rectilinear platform often called the terrace, with what appear to be perfectly straight, sharp-edged steps rising at near 90-degree angles. Nearby, two towering pillars look like they were placed to support a massive roof, and a long, straight wall borders one side of the main structure. There are features that look like carved pathways, ritual altars, and even a triangular pool. The entire complex gives the overwhelming impression of a ceremonial center or a fortress that has been meticulously carved from the living rock. The sheer scale is humbling. The main monolith is over 150 meters long, 50 meters wide, and 25 meters tall, making it larger than most modern sports stadiums. For those who believe it is man-made, the precision of the angles and the sheer number of seemingly architectural elements are simply too consistent and too numerous to be the product of random natural forces. The most prominent voice advocating for the artificial origin of Yonaguni is marine geologist Masaki Kimura from the University of the Ryukyus, who has spent decades studying and mapping the site. Kimura points to specific features that he argues defy natural explanation. He highlights the two round holes, each about 2 feet deep, located near the triangular pool, which he believes were used to hold wooden posts. He identifies what he calls scar marks on the rock, suggesting where stonemasons would have quarried material. Most compellingly, he has identified what appear to be carved reliefs of animals, including a tortoise and something resembling a moai-like human face, though these interpretations are highly subjective and hotly contested. Kimura's theory paints a picture of a vast, sunken city, perhaps part of the legendary lost continent of Mu, that was suddenly submerged by a massive tectonic event and rising sea levels at the end of the glacial period. This narrative suggests a complete rewriting of Pacific prehistory, introducing an advanced maritime culture that has left no other trace except for this solitary underwater sentinel. However, the scientific mainstream, represented by geologists like Robert Schoch of Boston University, who has also dived at the site, offers a powerful counter-argument. They point to the fundamental nature of the rock itself. The Yonaguni Formation is made of sandstone, specifically a type that is heavily fractured along natural horizontal and vertical planes due to its tectonic activity in an earthquake-prone zone. This natural jointing system means the rock is predisposed to break in straight lines and right angles. The immense pressures and shifts of tectonic plates can easily shear off huge slabs of stone, creating the dramatic, step-like terraces and monolithic blocks we see. The relentless forces of ocean currents, which can carry abrasive sand, would then erode the softer layers of rock at a faster rate, further accentuating these sharp edges and creating the illusion of carved channels and staircases. This process, known as differential erosion, is a well-documented natural phenomenon and can create astonishingly geometric formations on land, such as the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland or the mesas of the American Southwest. For geologists, Yonaguni is a spectacular but entirely natural example of this process occurring underwater. The debate ultimately hinges on a critical absence, the lack of any unequivocal human-made artifacts. Despite numerous dives and surveys, no one has ever found a single stone tool, a piece of pottery, a hearth, or a burial site within the immediate vicinity of the monument. In archaeology, context is everything. A pyramid is undeniably man-made not just because of its shape, but because of the tombs, artifacts, and hieroglyphs found within and around it. At Yonaguni, that contextual evidence is utterly missing. The the steps and platforms, no matter how geometrically pleasing, exist in an artistic and cultural vacuum. This silence is the strongest argument for the natural origin theory. If a culture advanced enough to quarry and shape hundreds of thousands of tons of stone existed here, where is the rest of their material culture? Where are their villages, their tools, their refuse heaps? The ocean has preserved the stone monument. Why would it not preserve even a fragment of something unmistakably human? The enduring fascination with the Yonaguni monument lies in this very ambiguity. It exists in a gray zone between known science and tantalizing speculation. It forces us to look more critically at the natural world and recognize its ability to produce forms that mimic human design with uncanny accuracy. Yet, it also prods us to remain humble about the gaps in our historical record. The end of the last ice age was a period of catastrophic sea level rise, swallowing up vast stretches of coastal land all over the world. It is not impossible that early human settlements on these now submerged continental shelves have been completely lost to time. Yonaguni may not be a sunken city, but its mystery serves as a powerful reminder that the floor of the ocean is the planet's largest museum, holding secrets we are only beginning to explore. It challenges us to keep questioning, to keep diving, and to remain open to the possibility that the story of human civilization may be deeper and far older than we ever dreamed. Among the priceless leather and papyrus manuscripts discovered in the caves of Qumran, one stands utterly apart, not for its spiritual wisdom, but for its material, its message, and its maddening materialistic mystery. This is the Copper Scroll, and it is arguably the most peculiar and frustrating archaeological document ever found. Unlike the other Dead Sea Scrolls, which are literary and religious texts penned on perishable materials, this document, dating from 50 to 100 CE, is engraved onto sheets of pure, oxidized copper. The choice of metal itself is a powerful statement of intent. This was not a text meant to fade or tear. This was a record designed to endure, to outlast papyrus and leather, to preserve its message across centuries. And what a message it is! The Copper Scroll contains no psalms, no prophecies, no sacred laws. Instead, it reads like a cryptic treasure map, a dry, bureaucratic inventory of 64 locations where staggering quantities of gold, silver, precious spices, and sacred vessels were allegedly hidden. The sheer scale of the treasure it describes is enough to take one's breath away and immediately invite skepticism. It lists over 4,600 talents of gold and silver, a weight that translates to many tons of precious metal. To put that into perspective, the annual tribute from the entire Roman province of Judea at the time was perhaps a few hundred talents. The treasure described is so vast it would have dwarfed the wealth of Herod the Great and represented a significant portion of the entire Mediterranean world's wealth. This has led many scholars to dismiss it as folklore, a piece of sectarian fantasy perhaps describing a mythical, unearthly treasure from a bygone age. But the scroll's chillingly mundane, logistical details pull powerfully in the opposite direction. It doesn't speak in mythical terms. It gives specific, practical instructions that seem to describe real, physical infrastructure. It mentions drains, conduits, cisterns, and specific depths. It refers to a place called the River of the Dome and another called the Fortress. It describes vaults, tunnels, and pools, often providing precise measurements in cubits. This doesn't sound like a heavenly vision. It sounds like a foreman's report, a set of instructions for a team of engineers or a lone survivor tasked with recovering the hoard. The language implies a sophisticated understanding of hydrology and construction, pointing to the existence of specific, man-made water systems and subterranean chambers that were engineered to conceal something of immense value. This is where the scroll transforms from a mere inventory into a hint of a massive, clandestine infrastructure project. The most compelling theory is that the treasure was real, and it represented the collective wealth of the Jewish people, systematically hidden away in the years leading up to the catastrophic Roman siege of Jerusalem in 70 CE. In this scenario, priests or rebels would have engineered a series of secret caches, perhaps modifying existing water systems, cisterns, and tombs to create impregnable vaults beneath the very earth. The scroll, then, is not a fantasy but a devastatingly real recovery document, a last-ditch effort to preserve the knowledge of where the soul of a nation was buried to keep it from falling into Roman hands. The use of copper suggests the creators knew the information had to survive fire, water, and time itself. The fact that it was found hidden in a cave near Qumran, separate from the other scrolls, suggests it was considered uniquely dangerous or valuable, perhaps the most important document of all. Yet, despite numerous expeditions and searches using the scroll's clues, not a single item from its list has ever been conclusively found. The landmarks it names are obscure, the measurements are cryptic, and 2,000 years of erosion, earthquakes, and urban development have likely obliterated or buried the starting points forever. The copper scroll, therefore, exists in an agonizing limbo between myth and history. Its physical reality as a copper artifact proves someone went to incredible lengths to preserve this list. Its content suggests a hidden world of engineering and secrecy that we can only dimly perceive. It is a testament to the fact that ancient texts can be more than just stories. They can be literal guides to lost physical wonders, even if those wonders remain frustratingly out of reach. It forces us to look at the dry, rocky landscape of Judea and wonder what still lies beneath, waiting in engineered darkness for a map that can no longer be fully read, a permanent whisper of a fortune that either never existed or is still there, patiently guarding the lost treasure of a vanished world. Descending from the sunlit world into the cool, silent earth of Malta, we enter a realm where architecture, spirituality, and a mysterious science of sound converge to create one of the most haunting and enigmatic spaces from the ancient world. The Hal Saflini Hypogeum is not a structure built upward but a sacred complex carved downward, an entire subterranean temple of the dead meticulously hollowed out of the living limestone over centuries between 3300 and 3000 BCE. This was no simple burial pit. It was a massive, multi-level undertaking that involved the removal of an estimated 2,000 tons of solid rock using only the simplest of stone, bone, and antler tools. The scale is staggering, but it is the hypogeum's ethereal and carefully engineered acoustic properties that elevate it from an archaeological curiosity to a profound mystery, suggesting its creators possessed a sophisticated understanding of sound physics that seems impossibly advanced for its time. The complexity of the hypogeum's layout is a marvel of prehistoric planning. The complex is organized across 3 distinct levels that delve deeper into the earth, each serving a potentially different function in the rituals of death and rebirth. The upper level feels most like a natural cave system, expanded and adapted for use. The middle level is where the artistry truly blossoms, with its rooms carved to mimic the architecture of the above-ground megalithic temples, complete with false ceilings, corbelled roofs, and doorways that echo the trilithon designs found on the surface. Here one finds the famous Oracle Room, a small, oval chamber that holds the site's most baffling secret. But it is the lowest, deepest level that is most sobering, a silent, sunken funerary chamber where the bones of an estimated 7,000 individuals were found, a silent testament to the site's primary role as a collective tomb over many generations. The logistical achievement of excavating this deep, 3-tiered labyrinth cannot be overstated. Working by the faint, flickering light of oil lamps, the builders had to precisely calculate the size and placement of chambers and pillars to prevent catastrophic collapse, all while following a preconceived sacred blueprint that had to account for the flow of people, the placement of the dead, and the performance of rituals in a pitch-black environment. The true spine-tingling wonder of the Hypogeum, however, is not just seen, it is heard. The entire complex functions as a massive, underground sound resonator, but the oracle room is its acoustic heart. This small chamber is engineered in such a way that it can amplify a human voice with startling clarity and power. A low-frequency sound, like a deep chant or a drumbeat, made in this room does not merely get louder. It creates a powerful, reverberating vibration that can be felt physically throughout the chest and is audible in every corner of the Hypogeum. The sound seems to emanate from the walls and floor themselves, creating an immersive, otherworldly experience that would have been utterly terrifying and awe-inspiring to a Neolithic participant. Even more mysteriously, the chamber is tuned to a specific resonant frequency. Research by acoustic experts like Dr. Paolo De Bertollis has shown that the room powerfully amplifies sound at a frequency of 110 Hz, a specific vibration that falls within the lower range of the male human voice. Why is this significant? Modern neuroacoustic research has revealed that exposure to sound at this specific frequency has a distinct effect on the human brain. It can alter brainwave patterns, potentially suppressing the language centers of the left hemisphere and allowing the more intuitive, emotional right hemisphere to become more dominant. This mental shift is associated with feelings of heightened suggestibility, deep relaxation, and even trance-like states. When you combine this acoustic engineering with the physical context, a dark, labyrinthine tomb filled with the remains of ancestors, illuminated only by flickering lamplight, the purpose becomes chillingly clear. This was not an accidental byproduct of the architecture, it was the entire point. The priests or shamanic figures of this temple period culture were not just spiritual leaders, they were master technicians of consciousness. They used this engineered space as a tool to facilitate profound religious experiences. Imagine a ceremony where a priest's chant, amplified and distorted into a pervasive, bone-shaking vibration, seems to be the voice of the earth itself speaking from the walls. For the participants already in a heightened state of emotion, the effect would have been transformative, a powerful sensory manipulation that provided direct, undeniable proof of the spirit world. The Hypogeum was a machine for making faith, a device designed to bridge the gap between the living and the dead through the controlled application of sound physics. It stands as an unparalleled example of how the ancient world seamlessly wove together empirical observation and spiritual belief. These people discovered a natural acoustic phenomenon through careful observation, and then, with immense effort and skill, they carved that phenomenon into the very bedrock of their island, creating a permanent portal to the divine that continues to hum with its ancient power, waiting silently in the dark for a voice to bring its magic back to life. Far to the north, in the vast, rolling steppes of Russia's southern Urals, lies a discovery that has fundamentally rewritten our understanding of Bronze Age Europe and Asia. This is Arkaim, a mysterious circular fortress often called Russia's Stonehenge, though that name scarcely does justice to the complexity of this integrated astronomical, metallurgical, and social marvel. Dating back to the 17th century BCE, this was not a mere village but a highly sophisticated, planned settlement that exhibits a level of organization and scientific knowledge that seems to belong to a much later era. Its discovery in 1987 was almost accidental, revealed by aerial surveys during a planned reservoir project that was thankfully halted to preserve this unparalleled window into a forgotten world. The first and most striking feature of Arkaim is its profound geometric perfection. The entire settlement is a series of concentric circles, two massive rings of fortified walls surrounded by a deep defensive moat. The outer wall was originally over 16 feet high and 18 feet thick, constructed from packed earth and reinforced with timber and unbaked clay bricks, creating a formidable barrier against both enemies and the harsh steppe winds. Within these walls, the layout was meticulously organized. The outer ring contained approximately 39 dwellings, each with its own door opening onto a single, circular main street that ran like a ring road. These homes were not simple huts, they were substantial structures, each equipped with a hearth, wells, and even storage cellars for food. The inner ring held another 27 buildings, but these seemed to be of a different, perhaps more specialized purpose, potentially housing skilled artisans or serving communal functions. At the very center of this cosmic bull's-eye was a large, rectangular square, completely free of buildings, believed to have been used for communal gatherings, rituals, or perhaps as a corral for livestock. This was urban planning on a grand, symbolic scale, a society that valued order, community, and a clear social structure, all encoded into the very geometry of their home. But Arkaim's true genius extends far beyond its walls and into the heavens above. The entire complex functions as a precise astronomical observatory. The settlement is aligned with a precision that reveals a deep and sophisticated understanding of celestial movements. Researchers have identified that 30 of the 39 outer dwellings have specific alignments with key astronomical events. Certain gates and openings in the walls are positioned to mark the rising and setting of the sun and moon during the solstices and equinoxes. For instance, on the summer solstice, an observer standing at the center of the complex would see the sun rise directly through one specific gate and set through another directly opposite, effectively turning the entire fortress into a giant calendar and celestial map. This knowledge was not abstract, it was vital for an agricultural society, dictating the timing of planting and harvest in a challenging climate, and it would have granted the priestly or ruling class immense authority, as they alone could interpret the divine messages written in the stars. The surprises continue underground. The inhabitants of Arkaim were not just farmers and stargazers, they were master metallurgists and engineers. Each dwelling revealed a stunning array of technological amenities. They had sophisticated wells that doubled as ventilation shafts for complex subterranean food storage systems, keeping supplies cool and fresh. More impressively, every single home was equipped with its own metallurgical workshop, complete with a furnace and smelting crucibles. Evidence shows they worked with copper and bronze, producing high-quality tools, weapons, and ornaments. The entire settlement was serviced by a groundbreaking drainage and sewage system, perhaps one of the oldest ever discovered. A covered channel ran beneath the circular main street, collecting wastewater from each household and funneling it outside the walls, a public health innovation that would not become standard in European cities for thousands of years. This combination of advanced astronomy, mass-scale metallurgy, and urban sanitation paints a picture of a society that was incredibly advanced, clean, and technologically proficient, a stark contrast to the typical image of Bronze Age nomads as primitive wanderers. The existence of Arkaim, along with dozens of other similar country of towns settlements in the region, forces a dramatic reconsideration of Eurasian prehistory. This was not a peripheral backwater but a vibrant, innovative culture now known as the Sintashta. These people are also credited with two other world-changing innovations: the development of the spoked-wheel chariot, evidence for which comes from burial sites nearby, and the intensive domestication of the horse. This culture represents a crucial nexus, a melting pot where Indo-European traditions from the West met and fused with influences from the Central Asian steppes. Arkaim challenges the long-held notion that advanced civilization and urbanism were born solely in the ancient Near East and slowly diffused outward. Instead, it suggests that multiple centers of innovation emerged independently, responding to their environment with unique and brilliant solutions. The people of Arkaim were not passive recipients of culture. They were dynamic creators, architects of their own precise universe under the vast steppe sky, their circular city a testament to a forgotten golden age of Bronze Age science and society. After journeying across continents and millennia to explore these 30 astonishing feats of ancient engineering, a compelling pattern begins to emerge from the stone, a shared language of ingenuity whispered by civilizations that never knew each other. It is a language built on three fundamental pillars: a profound connection to the cosmos, a mastery of moving the immovable, and a breathtaking capacity for coordinated, long-term planning that seems to defy our modern notions of primitive society. From the solstice-aligned terraces of Mnajdra on Malta to the Pleiades-oriented avenues of Teotihuacan in Mexico, we see cultures separated by oceans independently developing a sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics. They weren't just stargazers, they were cosmic architects building earthly mirrors of the heavens to track time, predict seasons, and anchor their spiritual beliefs in the predictable dance of the sun, moon, and stars. This wasn't mere superstition, it was a precise empirical science encoded in stone, a testament to millennia of patient observation passed down through generations. The second unifying thread is perhaps the most visually stunning: the seemingly impossible movement and manipulation of massive stone. Whether it's the 800-ton megaliths at Baalbek, the 300-ton giants at Sacsayhuamán, or the 50-ton Olmec heads hauled from distant quarries, we see a global obsession with scale that transcends practical necessity. The methods, while varied, all point to a deep, intuitive understanding of simple physics: levers, ramps, water buoyancy, and the power of rhythmic, coordinated human effort. The Inca technique of walking multi-ton moai across Easter Island, the Egyptian use of water-lubricated sledges, and the Roman employment of massive pulleys and capstans all reveal a universal truth: ancient engineers were masters of mechanics, using friction, gravity, and geometry to achieve what we now assume requires diesel and steel. This points to highly specialized knowledge, a class of master builders who understood the properties of materials and the mathematics of force in ways we are still struggling to fully comprehend. This leads to the third and perhaps most humbling pattern: the sheer organizational power required to see these projects through. The construction of the Great Pyramid or the Derinkuyu underground city was not a matter of a few years. These were endeavors that spanned decades, even centuries. They required a stable, stratified society capable of supporting a vast non-agricultural workforce, feeding, housing, and motivating thousands of people toward a goal that none of them would live to see completed. This speaks to a level of social cohesion and long-term vision that is almost alien to our short-term modern mindset. It suggests the presence of a powerful, unifying ideology, whether religious, royal, or communal, that was compelling enough to coordinate generations of labor. This was not the work of slaves under the lash, as old narratives suggested, but likely a complex system of social obligation, religious duty, and skilled craftsmanship that bound a society together in a shared, monumental purpose. When confronted with this overwhelming evidence of coordinated genius, the human mind naturally seeks an explanation, and the theories proposed span a fascinating spectrum from the rigorously academic to the wildly speculative. Mainstream archaeology, represented by scholars using experimental archaeology and careful analysis of tool marks and site logistics, champions the power of human ingenuity. They point to the slow, cumulative accretion of knowledge, the trial and error refinement of techniques over centuries, and the immense, yet achievable, power of large, well-organized workforces using simple machines. This school of thought argues that we have profoundly underestimated the intelligence, patience, and resourcefulness of our ancestors, preferring a narrative of lost mystery over the more impressive reality of slow, determined human progress. On the other end of the spectrum, authors like Graham Hancock and others propose a more radical alternative history. Their theories suggest a cataclysmic interruption in human history, a great flood or other global catastrophe that wiped out a highly advanced prehistoric global civilization. In this view, the scattered survivors of this mother culture traveled the world, imparting their knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, and megalithic construction to the emerging hunter-gatherer societies. These ancient teachers became deified as gods or culture heroes, and their advanced techniques, now only half remembered, were used to build the mysterious structures we see today. This theory elegantly explains the common threads across disparate cultures, but is criticized for a lack of concrete archaeological evidence for such a global civilization, often relying on interpretation of myth and alleged geological patterns. Then there is the most famous fringe theory, ancient astronauts, popularized by Erich von Däniken. This idea posits that extraterrestrial visitors provided the technological knowledge and perhaps even the muscle to achieve these construction feats. Proponents point to the precise astronomical alignments and the sheer weight of the stones as evidence beyond human capability, interpreting carvings like those at Dendera as literal depictions of advanced technology. While this theory captures the imagination, it is overwhelmingly rejected by academics who argue it is a form of technological racism that robs ancient cultures of their own achievements, attributing their brilliance to outside forces rather than recognizing their innate human genius. Perhaps the most satisfying synthesis lies not in choosing one theory over another, but in recognizing that the truth may be a complex tapestry woven from all of them. It is entirely possible that a much older, now submerged coastal civilization hinted at by sites like Göbekli Tepe and Yonaguni did possess a more sophisticated understanding of the stars and stoneworking, knowledge that was dispersed and degraded over millennia. This lost wisdom could have been integrated into later cultures, becoming mythologized and ritualized over time. The great lesson of these 30 projects is not that we need to find a single, simple answer, but that we must expand our understanding of human potential. They collectively push us to abandon a linear, progressive view of history and embrace a more complex, cyclical one, where knowledge can be lost, forgotten, and rediscovered. These silent stones are not anomalies. They are permanent invitations to question, to explore, and to marvel at the breathtaking capabilities of the human mind when driven by faith, necessity, and an unyielding desire to build a legacy that would echo through the ages. Reflecting on these 30 ancient wonders that we have explored together, a single, humbling truth emerges with undeniable force. Our ancestors were not primitive figures stumbling toward modernity, but brilliant, resourceful, and profoundly capable engineers whose legacy continues to challenge the very foundations of our historical narrative. Each stone in the Great Pyramid, each gear in the Antikythera Mechanism, each echoing chamber in the Hypogeum is a testament to a universal human drive, an insatiable urge to understand the cosmos, to defy natural limits, and to build something that would outlast the fleeting span of a single lifetime. These projects are not merely ruins, they are conversations across time, written in the language of astronomy, physics, and stone, and we are only just beginning to learn how to read them. The most thrilling aspect of this entire journey is the realization that this story is far from over. For every mystery we believe we have solved, a dozen more questions emerge from the shadows. Ground-penetrating radar is revealing hidden chambers beneath the sands of Egypt and vast, undiscovered networks beneath the plains of Peru. Advanced material science is slowly decoding the chemical secrets of Roman concrete, while genetic and linguistic research is untangling the migration patterns of the megalith-building cultures of prehistoric Europe. Each technological leap in our own time provides a new key to unlock the past, suggesting that the greatest discoveries are not behind us, but lie ahead, waiting for the right moment, the right tool, and the right curious mind to bring them to light. This is where the adventure truly continues, and it's an adventure that you can be a part of. The field of archaeology is no longer the exclusive domain of academics in dusty libraries. It is a global, collaborative effort. Satellite imagery allows amateur sleuths to scan remote landscapes for undiscovered sites from their home computers. Crowdsourced funding supports groundbreaking excavations, and open access journals share new findings with the world at an unprecedented pace. The next great revelation about Puma Punku, or the lost meaning of the Karnak alignments, could come from anywhere: a local farmer noticing a strange pattern in a field, a diver spotting an unusual formation on the ocean floor, or a programmer writing an algorithm to cross-reference ancient astronomical data. So, what do you think? After this tour of humanity's most enigmatic achievements, which project captured your imagination the most? Do you believe the Dendera relief depicts a sacred symbol or a sophisticated technology? Is the Yonaguni monument a natural masterpiece or a sunken city from a forgotten age? The comments section below is your forum, a place to share your theories, your questions, and your passion for the profound mysteries of our shared past. This conversation is what keeps history alive, transforming it from a static record into a dynamic, ever-evolving search for truth. If this journey through the impossible has sparked your curiosity, just imagine what else is out there waiting to be discovered. Our channel is dedicated to these deep dives into the unknown, unraveling the threads of history, science, and mystery that connect us to the incredible ingenuity of those who came before us. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the shadows of history. Thank you for your time, your curiosity, and for joining us on this remarkable expedition. Remember, the past is not a closed book. It is an open invitation